across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Lots to discuss, including the breaking news this afternoon that a migrant with an AK-47 face tattoo has been found guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage. We'll speak to one of his key lieutenants, Sarah Pochin, in just a few minutes' time. What does it say about this country that migrants who have raped people, migrants who have sexually assaulted people, and now one who has been found guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage are in this country? Surely they should be deported immediately. Also, the one-in, one-out scheme, seeing just 26 small boat migrants sent back to France as the Taliban has been selling £40 fake death threats. You want a death threat from the Taliban to say you shouldn't come back to Afghanistan, you should stay in this country? Well, that'll cost you £40, thanks, and that's all fine. We'll keep it up until total liberation. That is the vow of the British pro-Palestinian protesters. We'll speak to one of them who is Jewish in a few minutes' time. We'll also speak to the Conservative group leader of the London Assembly as the Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan, Knight of the Realm, he says that the chant "from the river to the sea" is not anti-Semitic. So hold on a second, Sir Sadiq. So if you say that you want to destroy Israel and you want to kill Jews by saying "from the river to the sea," that's apparently not anti-Semitic. Okay, some pretty mental gymnastics there from the Mayor of London. We'll talk about all of that. We'll also talk about the many other issues as well, including the sport. We'll find out what's in the Sun. Tomorrow we'll talk about Hamas rejecting Blair running Gaza, the peace deal there, yet these protests continue. Lots to discuss here on Talk. Want to make sure you get your voice on the air. You know me, between now and 7 o'clock we'll get as many of your opinions on the air as possible. You can do that in a variety of ways. Give me a ring, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message. You can send me a WhatsApp voice message, less than a minute please, or give me a ring, all on the main number. Those three things, all on the main number, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. So this Afghan migrant who's been found guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage in a TikTok post is an absolute scumbag called Fayaz Khan. He's 26 years old. Farage has called the video pretty chilling. Khan had a very large presence online. His TikTok videos had hundreds of thousands of views. He showed himself attempting to come to the UK by small boat last autumn. Now, it's interesting, there are loads of details about this. He'd been living in Stockholm since 2019, which isn't Afghanistan, of course. It is a safe country. Sweden is a safe country. So why on earth did he need to come across in a small boat in the first place? Anyway, he videoed it all. He put it all on TikTok. And let's just have a look at what Fayaz Khan posted on his TikTok account, what he said about Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
Not know me. I gonna come to England. I gonna mother pasa, man, you know, there's mother pasa. Every country know me, Vamaya, mother pasa. I'm TikToker, I'm not gang, I'm not mafia, I'm mafia's papa, mother pasa, man. Rais Montana.
So he seems like an absolutely lovely chap there. You not know me. I come to England because I want to marry with your sister. You not know me. Don't talk about me more. Delete the video. I am coming to England. I am going to pop, he says, making a gun gesture. Englishman Nigel, don't talk S-word about me. So that's pretty straightforward. Let's just remember a couple of weeks ago that Zia Youssef, Reform's head of policy, spoke about Nigel Farage's security being cut. He talked about this. Let's hear what Zia Youssef had to say
about it. But I think it is in the public interest that they know that just about 2 weeks ago, the authorities slashed the size of Nigel's security detail by 75%. The authorities cut Nigel's security detail by 75% 2 weeks ago. That's why so many of us around Nigel are so worried. Now, I want to be clear and reassure people who A, support Nigel, but B, all right-thinking people in this country who believe in sensible democratic politics in this country, that thankfully donors stepped in and have shored up that security, so Nigel is well protected. But the Prime Minister knows exactly what he's doing. This is a Prime Minister who's circling the drain, who, according to a poll this week, is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record. According to a poll this week, the majority of Labour members want to be replaced, and he's lashing out against the man that he knows. Starmer knows he cannot beat Nigel at the ballot box, so he's embarked on the most, I want to say it again, extraordinary, coordinated attacks to incite violence against the man who is the bookmaker's favourite to replace him at number 10 Downing Street. Right. It's disgusting, and he should apologise.
Zia Youssef there speaking to Mike Graham about a month ago, and lo, here we are, the migrant with an AK-47 face tattoo found guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage. Well, let's speak to Sarah Poochin MP. She is the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Sarah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Peter.
Well, this person has been found guilty. The justice system has done its job, but of course he shouldn't have been in this country in the first place. What do you think of all of this?
Well, that's right. He's been charged with being an illegal migrant into the country. So that's the first thing. And as you know, I've made very clear, and other members of Reform, elected politicians have made very clear, under a Reform government, anybody that arrives here in this country will be immediately deported. This vile individual, I believe, was arrested last October for these offences. So I would like to know where he's been since. I assume he's been held on bail, and I hope he'll be held on bail for the next week until he's sentenced. But yes, people have got to understand now the level of risk to Nigel Farage couldn't be higher. And this type of stuff only incites violence, incites people to try and get to Nigel. But not only Nigel, even myself, Peter. I've only been in this job, in this position for 5 months. I had to pull out of an event this morning because it had been leaked where I was going to be, when I was going to be there, and what time. So,
what happened this morning? Did you receive a threat, or what was the issue?
No, the issue is that if there's advance warning of any of us Reform politicians now being in a certain place at a certain time, on a certain day, then if all of that is leaked out onto social media, then sadly, in the current environment, not helped by, as I say, vile individuals like this person, then our safety is such at risk now, because we are raising these issues. We are calling this out for what it is. This is an illegal, or charged with being an illegal migrant in this country. He shouldn't be here, and he's inciting violence. What I would like to say, though, is I very much hope that the sentence that he receives next week reflects the severity of this offence, because I have two Lucy Connolly equivalents in my constituency that live in Runcorn that are currently out now on licence, but got 28. One got 28 months, one got 32 months for writing something on Twitter that was nothing like this level of incitement to kill. And there they are receiving well over 2 years of a custodial sentence. So I'll be very interested in watching very carefully what this individual receives next week.
Yes, we will. And of course, we know there has been so many examples of two-tier justice in this country. Let's hope that the book is thrown at this person. We've had MPs, of course, murdered within the last few years. Joe Cox, Sir David Amess as well. From your perspective, Sarah, it's a risky job. Nigel, of course, I don't mean this in a critical or horrible way, but he is just factually more high profile than you are, of course. But still, you feel a huge threat to your life. I mean, what do you do without giving too much detail? What kind of mitigations do you take place? Or do you do every day? It must be something to live with all the time when you're trying to serve your constituents and actually be accessible as well.
Exactly, and it's so important to be accessible. But at the end of the day, Peter, I knew what I was taking on. The people in Runcorn, the people in this constituency need access to me. They need, where I am in Runcorn, I have an office where anybody can come and see me. And that is so important. I will never, ever hide away from these people. I will never stop saying the things that I say, and I will never stop standing up for the issues that are going on in this community, like the illegal asylum seekers dispersed in my community here in HMOs.
Let's talk about that more in just a second. Just to finish the point on Nigel Farage, he, as Zia Youssef told us about a month ago, had his taxpayer-funded security, which I do not begrudge him in the slightest, reduced by 75%. Now Reform pays about £1 million a year for Nigel Farage to get round-the-clock security guards. What should happen? I mean, surely there is a credible threat to Nigel Farage. Surely the government should be providing that for him. And the brave officers who I used to work with when I was in government of the Royalty and Specialist Protection Branch of the Metropolitan Police.
Look, I absolutely 100% agree with that. Nigel Farage will be the next Prime Minister of this country. We have 3 years and 9 months, I think, to go of this government. But the fact is, the polls are all saying unless something goes drastically wrong, then Nigel Farage will be the next Prime Minister. We are the real party of opposition. We know that. You only have to look at the polls. So, yes, Nigel is a huge target, and he absolutely should be getting full security to protect him as we move towards the next general election. And I would say he's much more justified. Peter, we hear about Angela Rayner's boyfriend using government-paid security, government-paid cars to move house, to pick her. Well, actually, I won't say that because it's not in public. Sorry, but I've heard all sorts of things about what goes on with those protection officers. It's an absolute disgrace. Nigel Farage should be protected to the hilt because he's going to be the next Prime Minister.
Let's talk about migration. You mentioned it in your constituency there. Labour's one in, one out scheme has seen only 26 small boat migrants sent back to France. During the time of the scheme, about 10,000 have arrived, including 1,000 on a single day last week. We get this news, and indeed the news about this person convicted of threatening to kill Nigel Farage, an Afghan. On the day it's revealed by the Telegraph that the Taliban are selling fake death threats for asylum seekers to dupe the UK for £40. Pay the Taliban 40 quid and they'll say, yeah, we've got a threat out on your life. I mean, you just couldn't make it up.
But what is so important, Peter, is that the Home Office get a grip of what's happening here. It is not acceptable for those sort of letters to just be taken as is. I mean, it's pretty obvious. The Taliban are laughing all the way to the bank, clearly, and these illegal asylum seekers are laughing all the way to our benefit system. The people that are losing out here are the British taxpayers. Our Home Office has got a lot to answer for. It needs to be vetting properly these individuals. It needs to be doing checks. As I said, under a Reform government, they won't be setting foot inside this country. But we need to also be looking at the ones that are already here in our migrant hotels, in our houses of multiple occupation, out in the community, working illegally. We need to be going after them and not accepting such nonsense as these made-up Taliban letters. It's not good enough, and the Home Office need to get a grip.
Sarah, thank you. That's Sarah Pochin there, the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Thank you to Molly, who says Fayez Khan, that's the scumbag who's been convicted of threatening to kill Nigel Farage, found guilty of this. He will do a couple of months in prison, and his human rights lawyer will make sure he has a permanent right to remain because he's from Afghanistan. And we'll have to put up with it. How much more can we put up with from this government? I wish I could afford to leave this hellhole of a country, the country I used to love and be proud of. Margaret in Birmingham says there is no question this Afghan migrant has to be deported. Starmer now has to find a voice, find a backbone and show him some leadership and deport him. Tony in Lancashire, first caller of Talk Drive today, 0344 499 1000. Tony, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Cheers for taking my call. Yeah, brilliant programme this. Yeah, I was just listening then. You said at one part of it where they seem to be more bothered about his safety. You know, or if they send him back to Afghan, they might do something to him. Well, I don't care. What about our safety, or here? Do you know, I'll be glad when Reform is in, mate. It's about time they start to bloody detain them and deport them. I don't care where they send them back home.
I mean, this guy literally has an AK-47 tattooed on his face. He made gun gestures and said he was going to kill Nigel Farage. I do not want that person in my country.
No, I don't. But yet he is going there. It makes my bloody blood boil, it does.
Tony, I think a lot of people
feel like.
I think a lot of people feel the same way, Tony. Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you to Penny, who says this country gets more unbelievable every day. These scum are being welcomed into our country and being treated royally at our expense. It is absolutely disgraceful. Tez in Wales says, I think Nigel is the biggest target in British politics aside from Starmer. It is scandalous his security was cut. Jane says, your audience have been telling you for years the migrant crisis is a national security emergency. The government are not keeping the citizens safe. It is frightening. Well, one thing that is going to be happening over the next few hours is that yet another pro-Palestinian protest is going to happen in London. Why? Why is that happening? There is a peace deal in Gaza, there's a peace deal in the Middle East, and it looks as if those hostages, all 48 of them, 20 of them we think alive, and the bodies of another 28 may well be coming home, and many Palestinian prisoners who are in Israel could well be released back to Gaza. This is an end to the conflict at the moment anyway. This is a very positive development. So why on earth is yet another protest scheduled for tomorrow? We'll find out from one person who is Jewish, who is protesting. UK Jews Against Israeli Apartheid. That is the organisation that they're part of. We'll hear from that in a second. You're going to want to hear that. I want your reaction as well, not just to that, but also to what we've been hearing about Nigel Farage. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
So nobody told you before you got on the bus you can't wear a football shirt to drive the bus? When you got back to the depot, was that when they fired you or what?
On Monday morning, they sent an email over, my agency did.
Right.
They sent an email saying regarding the events on Saturday the 4th of October,
right,
we'll be dismissing you due to a uniform policy. The video has circulated all over social media.
So, like, a few million people have seen this now?
I didn't think it would go so big, but it's quite a surreal experience, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Don says, hi Peter, Trump was so right about the UK when he said we are being destroyed from the inside. How many more undocumented men will invade our shores, asked Don. We'll take many more calls, texts, tweets, voice notes between now and 7 o'clock. You know the number, 0344 499 1000. I want to talk about the Middle East. I want to talk about the Gaza deal, and specifically why a pro-Palestinian march is happening tomorrow in London. We know this deal has been essentially signed. We know some of the hostages, well, all of the hostages are coming back, including the bodies of those murdered by Hamas terrorists. Emily Hilton joins me now. She is co-founder of NAMOD, which is UK Jews Against what she calls Israeli apartheid. Emily, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Why are you?
No worries.
Why are you protesting tomorrow when a deal has been done?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that even though a deal has been done, we cannot go back to a status quo of ongoing occupation and apartheid, of which
well, there wasn't ongoing
international
occupation because Israel withdrew in 2005.
But the occupation still exists in the West Bank, and also Israel still controls all the sea and land borders in Gaza. And so I think what we are saying at this time is that it's not just simply enough to withdraw, and that this peace deal cannot be the end. It has to be the beginning of a future that ensures the protections.
I don't think anyone would dispute
the protections and equality for all Palestinians and Israelis.
I want equality for everybody. What I also know is that I don't think there's going to be too many people who would dispute that this is the beginning of a process. This isn't totally fixed. So why do you need a protest? What are you protesting about?
I mean, I think that it's very, very clear that there's also a number of things up in the air as well, in terms of that. We've seen the way that Israel has and did breach the ceasefire in March of this year, and that led to more catastrophic violence in Gaza. I would say that the deal is not in place.
But there's a ceasefire now. You're talking about things that happened in March. You're talking about things that happened in March. It's now October.
Well, there was a ceasefire in March as well, and it was broken. So this is the point: is that we have to be able to. What is the point of the ceasefire?
No. What is the point of having a march tomorrow?
I think that the march tomorrow is about saying to our political leaders and those who have an ability to put pressure on Israel to make sure that not only that this ceasefire remains in place, but also that we need to be thinking long-term and having a just future.
They've just committed to it. Why do you need to put pressure on someone who's just shown to the international community that they have committed to a ceasefire? What pressure needs to be put on someone?
As I've now said a few different times, historically, Israel has broken numerous ceasefires, including breaking one in.
They haven't broken this one.
That's because it just started.
And there was a ceasefire that Hamas broke on the 7th of October, but you don't seem to be putting pressure on them.
I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think
sorry.
You don't
think it's a fair assessment that Hamas broke a ceasefire on the 7th of October? Why not?
I wouldn't classify the attacks on Israeli civilians as the breaking of a ceasefire. I think that was something.
Well, there wasn't any
but
violence
also,
before
I would say
then.
that. That's not true. I mean, there's been numerous attacks on Gaza by Israel.
So when Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor for the United States, pointed out that it had been one of the quietest periods of violence between Israel and Gaza and Israelis and Palestinians, and then Hamas did their horrendous attack on the 7th of October against Israeli civilians and military, that wasn't a breach of a ceasefire.
I really feel like every time I come on this show, you lecture me about Hamas's attacks when I, as a Jewish woman with an Israeli husband, had people directly impacted by October 7th, and I find that increasingly frustrating to have to go through. But what I want to say to you is that even if that's true,
well, don't you find it frustrating when you, as a Jewish person, are on a march with people who are supporting organisations who want to kill all Jews?
I think that the implication that every single person who goes to a Palestine Solidarity March wants to kill all Jews is offensive.
I said some people.
And untrue.
I said
you said not numerous people.
Why don't you listen to what I'm saying?
I would say, as someone who has been on the marches multiple times, as a Jewish person who has been part of numerous organizations supporting Palestinian solidarity, has spent time in the West Bank, living directly with Palestinian communities, that that there is no inherent hostility to Jewish people, and we have to be very careful of that. And that even if we go back to a situation of ceasefire, Palestinians are still not free. They are still living under an occupation and a blockade where the Israeli government controls their lives. They do not have passports. They do not have citizenship. That hasn't changed. That is the status quo that we need to shift. We cannot go back to a status quo of occupation and apartheid. And that's what I believe people are marching to tomorrow and have marched for the last few years.
That any of that will happen. There's no suggestion that any of that will happen. Israel has just signed up to a deal. Are you grateful to Donald Trump for getting this deal over the line?
I am cautiously optimistic that this deal will create an end to the genocide, but we still have to be vigilant and ensure.
It's not a genocide.
Well, I believe that it is a genocide, and I believe the human rights organizations...
And our government doesn't believe it's a genocide either.
Yeah, and I think it's an incredibly disappointing position from the government to fail to look at exactly what Israel is doing. I've been deeply moved by friends of mine in Tel Aviv and in Israel who are Israelis demanding an end to this genocide, who are going out into the streets and holding up a mirror to their own society and saying, like, this is not acceptable. We will not allow this to happen. I've been horrified by the images of people starving in Gaza. I've been outraged that the families of hostages are being ignored and dismissed by their own government, and have been for the last 2 years.
In what way are they being ignored and dismissed when the hostages are about to be released?
I mean, the hostages' families, as you can see on news reports, have been attacked multiple times by the police, which is run by Itamar Ben-Gvir. They have been ignored by Israeli politicians who often cancel meetings with them.
In what way have they been ignored when they've just signed a deal to release the hostages?
This is 2 years long. There's been multiple times.
You don't seem to be accepting. Yeah, but you're not listening to me, Emily. You don't seem to be accepting that a deal has been done. There's an end to this conflict. You don't need to go out tomorrow. They've got the message. The conflict's over.
I mean, I think that it's not a conflict. For starters, it's not a conflict. It's at least a mass attack and a mass assault on Gaza, if not a genocide. But second of all, the point is
what should it? Final question.
We still don't. The hostages are still not back. Like, remember,
many
the
of them have come back, and they're going to come back, and you still won't be grateful because you just hate Israel. You just hate Israel, Emily.
I just hate Israel?
Yeah.
I have an Israeli husband and you're telling me I hate Israel?
Are you serious? What has Israel done since 1948 that you approve of?
I mean, that's a ridiculous question.
What has it done since 1948 that you approve of?
You are actually dismissing and being overly simplistic of something that is incredibly complicated and also very emotional for many Jewish people. You've asked me to come on here and talk to you about these protests. The idea that I simply hate Israel is a ridiculous misnomer. But also, I think fundamentally what we have to speak about...
Okay, name me one good thing they've done since 1948.
They gave back Sinai. I thought that was pretty good.
Good. Okay, there we are. Thanks for joining us, Emily. That's Emily Hilton there, who's from UK Jews Against Israeli Apartheid, who's apparently absolutely happy to go on a march with people who want to kill all Jews. That's what she's doing tomorrow. There we are. Right, let's talk to Susan Hall, who is an Assembly member of London's Assembly. She's of the Conservative group leader. Susan, sorry to keep you waiting there, but I just had to speak to that absolutely ridiculous argument of Emily Hilton there. Now, the Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan, he has said that From the River to the Sea isn't anti-Semitic. Can we see this clip? Oh, we'll play the clip in just a second, but we're in a situation where the Mayor of London... yeah, we've got it now. Let's play the clip of Sir Sadiq Khan.
Do you think to scream from the river to the sea, which they're doing during these hate marches, is appropriate? Do you think it is anti-Semitic?
Okay, I don't think it's anti-Semitic, and I think it's all about context. I've got to be clear in my remarks in relation to my concern about the fear, the increased fear Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the globe are feeling. I've gone out of my way since October the 7th, 2023, to reassure Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the country and across the...
But they don't feel reassured. How can they feel reassured? I tell you what, I'll finish here because you will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London, you are not doing that.
Sir Sadiq Khan saying there, I've gone out of my way to reassure Jews. Gosh, what an imposition for you as the leader of London. I really do feel for you, Sir Sadiq. Susan Hall is with us now. Apparently From the River to the Sea isn't anti-Semitic.
Oh, don't even start, Peter. It's so frustrating. How can he say those comments? The only kids that are stuck behind locked bars are our Jewish kids. The people that are most frightened of going out in London are our Jewish community. And this has gone on for years. And now with these wretched protests, my Jewish friends, I mean, I don't know what Emily was even thinking of, are frightened to go out and to call out From the River to the Sea. We all know it's calling for the elimination of the state of Israel or ethnic cleansing of the Jews living there. It's an utter disgrace, and I will stand up for the Jewish community, even if she, as part of it, won't.
It's fascinating. I just find it fascinating that she talks about and burnishes her credentials at every point and says, you know, I have an Israeli husband and all the rest of it. She hates the state of Israel. There's no doubt about that. And I gave her the opportunity to talk and give me examples of what it had done. And of course, course, the only example she gave was about giving land back to the Palestinians. A spokesman for Sir Sadiq Khan said the mayor was saying that it's not anti-Semitic to attend pro-Palestine protests. Some people consider the phrase "from the river to the sea" to be anti-Semitic because it's interpreted as calling for Israel to be wiped out completely, which clearly is anti-Semitic. Others argue that this is not what the chant is calling for or what they mean when they say it. The mayor has repeatedly said over his mayoralty that those who protest should act lawfully, peacefully and safely. At a time of heightened fear for Jewish people, he has also repeatedly said protesters should all be mindful of their words and how they impact other Londoners and not use chants that make Jewish Londoners scared. I mean, the fact is that what Sir Sadiq Khan has said here, and the fact that he has given an excuse for people to use an anti-Semitic phrase that calls for Israel to be eradicated, that in itself shows his true colours.
Of course it does. For all to see. I gave him every opportunity to say something that was helpful for the Jewish community. Of course he doesn't. Every single week we have these wretched demonstrations, and many of us thought, I bet they won't stop if anything, if we manage to get a ceasefire, and for sure they're carrying on. They just hate Israel. They hate the Jews, and this is so obvious. And many of us, I'm not Jewish, but I will defend them because of all the communities in London or in the country. The Jewish people are the ones that come off badly on all of these things. It's absolutely, I feel so strongly about this, Peter. It's a damn disgrace. And as for these wretched demonstrations, they're costing us all a fortune. The police should actually be on our streets keeping the rest of us safe, those taxpayers, us taxpayers that pay for the police. Instead of that, they're having to be at all these demonstrations where they're calling for all sorts of things beyond from the river to the sea. They're a damn disgrace and they should be stopped.
Thank you, Susan. Susan Hall there, who is an Assembly member, the Conservative Group Leader on the London Assembly. Lots of reaction to my discussions with Emily Hilton there, the co-founder of NAMOD, which is UK Jews Against Israeli Apartheid. Factually, it's not an apartheid. Factually, it's not a genocide. She seems to not realise those facts. Brian says, for goodness sake, tell this stupid person if she wants to protest for pro-Palestine, go and live there. Chris says, regarding the pro-Palestinian useful idiot, she doesn't speak for all Jews. Some Jews helped the Nazis in the 30s and the 40s. Ian says, wow, is this guest honestly arguing that October the 7th was not a breach of any ceasefire because it was an attack on civilians? What an embarrassment of a human being. It's disgusting. Good for you for pushing back, says Ian. Ask Emily how many more marches, says Chris in Newbury. Chris, I should have asked her that. Brian says, any protest now regarding Palestine should be considered protests of anti-Semitism and those protested should be arrested. If Starmer is serious about anti-Semitism, he and Khan should ban these protests. Yvonne says, just because these ideologists don't agree doesn't give them a right to be so vile. Nigel is the only one out of all the politicians saying that a lot of us are thinking he deserves protection. And one more on Nigel Farage as well. Jane says, I thought that all these MPs and protesters were doing this because they wanted a ceasefire. Actually, sorry, that's about Gaza. They got what they wanted. Have I got it wrong? Jane, you haven't got it wrong. Well, they said they wanted a ceasefire, but I think they're showing their true colours by coming tomorrow. You've got the ceasefire. You've got what you want. There's an end to the conflict, yet they're still protesting. Why are they protesting? Because they hate Israel. Israel can never do anything right. They've shown their true colours. They've revealed themselves for who they are. They hate Israel. Many of them, not all of them, hate Jews. That's what it is. Those are the facts. We're going to talk more about this. I want your thoughts on all of it. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to the former head of the UK Border Force about this migrant guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage in the TikTok video. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've got to do a couple of hellos because I keep forgetting to do this. Matthew stopped me on the tube today and said hello, wanted me to say hello to his mother, Sarah. Sarah, you're it's very good that you watch these programmes. I really appreciate it. Matthew's a very young man, a very good young man, and a credit to you. Sharon in Lurgan in Northern Ireland is a big fan of these programmes. She spoke to my dad recently. I want to say a big hello to Sharon and thank you for your loyalty. Steve in West Bromwich spoke to me in London recently as well. He was on his way to see Jean at the Apollo in Hammersmith in West London. I want to say a big hello to Steve. I'd forgotten to do those all for a couple of weeks apart from one of them. So hello to all of those people. If you ever see me out and about, say hello. It's always good to talk to viewers and listeners of this programme. So thank you very much indeed for all of that. Right then, I want to talk to Tony Smith now, who's former head of UK Border Force, about this migrant who is guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage in a TikTok video and all the other migration stories that are around. Tony, thank you for joining me today. I mean, this case, certainly, about someone who videoed himself coming across the channel when he didn't need to. He was living in Sweden, which isn't Afghanistan. That's a safe country. Coming across and then threatening to kill Nigel Farage. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm glad he's been convicted, Peter. I expect everybody is. I mean, if you've seen the video, hopefully most people have by now, he's a very nice piece of work. Of course, people will be saying, well, how did he get in the country in the first place? Well, he's in that cohort of small boat people that we cannot remove when they get within British territorial waters if they mention the magic word, asylum. And so we cannot deport him immediately. He commits a criminal offence. He goes to court. I think the story's midway through now, Peter. What's going to happen next is what everyone's going to say. Hopefully,
well, it's a very good point. Let's just remind ourselves what the scumbag says. Fayez Khan is 26. He is threatened to kill Nigel Farage in this video that he broadcast to his many thousands of followers on TikTok.
Not know me. I gonna come to England. I gonna mother passa, man. You know, there's mother passa. Every country know me. Vamaya mother passa. I'm TikToker. I'm not gang. I'm not mafia. I'm mafia's papa, mother passa, man. Rais Montana.
Lovely chap there. For those listening on the radio who can't see that, he was sort of headbutting the screen a couple of times when he was saying pop, 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 which is talking about killing Nigel Farage. He also has an AK-47 tattoo on his face. Yes, really. I don't know about you, Tony, but I would rather not have those people in my country.
No, so I would quite like to have detained him the moment I've got him in Dover, Peter. We spoke about this before. Kept him in detention, actually. Never been given bail for anything in the community, and any application for asylum, human rights or torture convention would be denied to somebody like that. But we don't have the legal framework for that, I'm afraid. The Tories tried it last time with a few efforts to exclude people from, at least from asylum, but they didn't go far enough with their legislation. And obviously this government are not interested in actually doing very much. So you've got a process where people like him, who are clearly very, very nasty people, are coming into Manston and they're claiming asylum, and 99 times out of 100, they're getting bail and pushed into the communities. And some we don't want people like that. I know people do not want people like that in the community. But if we're going to change this, we've got to have a radical approach to detention. We need to be able to detain anybody coming from France on a safe, which is a safe country, by a small boat at Manston or somewhere else, and keep them locked up until we can deport them. We're not doing that, Peter. We're giving most of them bail, and as you know, this deal, the one deal with France, we've only got rid of about, what, 26
small boat migrants have been sent back to France, and during that time, 10,000 have arrived. It is almost literally a drop in the ocean.
Exactly, Peter. So, you're going to stop them coming. You're going to have the message has to be, it's no point, because we're going to detain you and deport you. As soon as you get to Dover, if we can't just put you on one of our boats and take you back to France, which is what I'd prefer to do, if the French won't let us do that, because they won't give us berthing rights in Calais, all right, we'll bring you into Dover and we'll detain you. You will not be admitted into our community and you will be sent back. But we don't have that returns framework in place other than this one-to-one deal. Rwanda fell through because the courts didn't like it, but we've got to get in the habit of detaining people. What I'd like to hear from all the political parties are how much you're going to invest in detention, and are you going to be committed to detaining people until such time as we can remove them, because we don't want people like on our streets.
Are you surprised at all that the Taliban are selling £40 fake death threats for asylum seekers?
No, I mean, I did loads of interviews in my day, Peter, and I mean, forged documents were 10 a penny for all kinds of applications.
Or not, £40 each now, not 10 a penny.
But they're not going to do it for decent caseworker. I mean, you know, this is a game of forgery. It's a game of fraud. A lot of stuff. The problem we've got with asylum interviews is it's hard to disprove anything, because you can't really phone the Taliban and say, well, this is a genuine letter or not. You know, and the solicitors, the lawyers, will throw them at you, and they'll throw all the evidence at you and say, this bloke has done this. He got caught up in that. You can't possibly. And even if you don't believe any of it and you refuse him, you've now got a 54-week delay to get to the immigration tribunal, who will almost certainly overturn your case. So you shouldn't be considering them for asylum in the first place. They've come from France. It's a safe country. You can't apply for all of these things. You can't stay here pending that on bail. You can't go in a hotel. Do not pass go. Do not collect your £200. You will be deported. And we've got to get back into detain and deport. That's what I want to see. We used to do it back in the day, back in my day, but we just don't do it anymore, I'm afraid.
Tony, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate that. Really, really interesting to hear from Tony Smith there, the former head of the UK Border Force. What do you think about all of this? The migrant guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage in a TikTok video. This is something that is absolutely disgraceful. Nigel Farage is probably, as if the polls are to be believed, and there have been over 100 of them that say that he's going to be the next Prime Minister of this country, at least the largest party for Reform UK. So surely his security, as someone who's received many death threats, should be absolutely front and centre of what the government want to sort out and what they want to make sure that he has kept safe. Because we know that there are high-profile MPs, not even actually that high-profile, to be brutally honest, who were killed, who were murdered. Joe Cox and Sir David Amess, who were, really hard-working, good people. I'm not taking anything away from that, but they weren't in the cabinet, they weren't frontline politicians, yet they were murdered. Let's speak to Philippa in Dorset. Philippa's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Philippa, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good afternoon. I want to say that Nigel Farage needs to be protected at all costs, because he is going to be the next Prime Minister. And the reason why the powers that be have taken away 75% of his security is so that he will be an easy target. If Nigel doesn't exist, then the other parties won't have the problem of him becoming the next Prime Minister. So that's what I'm thinking about. And I think that Nigel just needs to have all his security back. He needs to be looked after. He needs to be listened to. He's saying all the right things. He's doing all the right things. And he just needs to be protected.
Why do you think they reduced his security? What do you think the reasoning was behind that? Because, I mean, anybody who knows anything about public figures these days is that many of them, through social media, even someone who's a sort of not even a Z-list celebrity like me, I mean, I've had a few death threats, right? It's not great, it's not nice, I don't need 24-hour protection, but someone like Nigel Farage absolutely does.
Of course he does, and the only reason why they want to get rid of his security, like I say, is so that he will be an easier target for whoever wants to take a pop at him. And he is an alternative to what's currently in power at the moment. He is a threat to Labour and Conservative and the Liberal Democrats, and that's what they don't like. They want to take away any possibility.
You don't honestly think that the government? You don't honestly think that the government wants to see Nigel Farage dead, do you?
Nothing would surprise me. Nothing would surprise me if he's not around, then he's not a threat to them anymore, and they can continue to do whatever they want, bring in digital ID, not stop the boats, all of that kind of thing. Nigel is for the people. He's for our culture. He's for just keeping Britain for the British, and that's what Labour and Conservative don't like.
Thank you, Philippa. That's Philippa.
He speaks the truth, and that's what they don't like.
Okay, Philippa, thank you. That's Philippa in Dorset there in Poole. Thank you to her for giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You can do that too. Lots on Emily Hilton as well, including Alvin and Gateshead. He says Emily Hilton is without a doubt the most unlikable person I've ever seen. Dawn in Chelmsford says, I wonder if Emily has been brainwashed. He has just articulated the most bizarre view about genocide and is clearly wrong. Richard in Kettering says the pro-Palestinian Jewish lady reminds me of a Churchill quote, an appeaser is one that feeds the crocodile in the hope that it will eat them last. That's Richard in Kettering. We're going to talk more about the Middle East in just a second. Rear Admiral Chris Parry is standing by. We'll talk to him in just a minute and get your views too. 0344 499 1000.
Right. They sent an email saying regarding the events on Saturday the 4th of October,
right,
we'll be dismissing you due to a uniform policy. The video has circulated all over social media.
So, what, a few million people have seen this now?
I didn't think it would go so big, but it's quite a surreal experience, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much for your company. Keep your comments coming in. Deborah in Essex says, you're on fire today, Peter. Good on you for putting that woman in her place. It's a shame we have to wait over 3 years to get this government out and 2 years for Can. It's shameful what's happening to your country. Well, we will win in the end. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you to the person who's talking about Emily a little bit earlier on. Says, these idiots have nothing better to do. They'll never stop. They'll thrive on marches and violence. Go get a life and give it a rest. Give our police force a rest. She just doesn't understand, does she? Well, let's talk about the Middle East. Let's talk about that deal. Let's talk about what is on offer for the Palestinian and indeed Israeli people. Earlier, the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper spoke about the ceasefire while on a trip to Paris.
We just desperately need the complete end to all of the fighting, alongside the release of hostages and the restoration of desperately needed aid. We're already working, there's already work underway to start getting the aid back in place. So we need all of the components of this ceasefire agreement, this first phase of the US peace initiative, have to be in place as rapidly as possible, implemented as swiftly as possible. We've had 2 years of unimaginable suffering, and it's extremely important that this is a moment of peace, not just a moment of hope.
Yvette Cooper there, the Foreign Secretary, speaking to the BBC. Well, Rear Admiral Dr Chris Parry, who's a former NATO and Royal Navy commander, is with me now. Chris, what do you make of this peace deal? It certainly seems to be very rapidly bringing peace to the area, getting the hostages back, releasing a load of Palestinian prisoners that Israel has been holding, and it does seem to me, anyway, to be moving in the right direction. What do you think?
Well, Peter, I'm old enough to remember that these things have happened before, and agreements like this are very fragile, and until you see them actually delivering, you really can't actually assess whether they're going to be effective or not. There's still time for Hamas to find ways to wriggle out of some of their agreements. I think there's a real problem with security in the Gaza Strip. For example, who's going to maintain order? The Americans say they're going to send 200 troops. Well, they themselves can become targets once they're on the ground. And I know from my own peacekeeping and peacemaking operations that actually targeting the peacemakers is actually where you can get leverage within these communities.
It'll be very interesting to see what actually happens in terms of the aid that will come flooding in, and how the Palestinians react to all of this. What are your hopes for the dismantling of the military aspect of Hamas, the terrorist side of them, and them and their leaders actually leaving Gaza, the part of that deal, this phase 2 and 3 aspects of this that don't seem to be completely nailed down just yet?
No, I think the real issue is that everybody's been pushing for a ceasefire. That's always been the tactic of the Palestinian side when it's been losing. And so essentially they've got what they wanted. They've got a ceasefire, and how the governance arrangements are going to be put in place to make sure that the Gaza Strip can be actually governed, how it can be policed, all that sort of thing. We don't have any details of that. Who is going to provide the security for the people of Gaza if it's not Hamas? And we know what sort of peace they're going to provide. It's, an extortion racket and protection racket. So we've got a complete vacuum at the moment. Total anarchy threatens if we don't have the governance structures in place before that humanitarian aid arrives. Otherwise, it's just going to become a free-for-all. There'll be a black market, and we'll have scenes similar to what we had in Iraq after the collapse of the Saddam regime.
How quickly do structures need to be built? Who can build those structures, and is Tony Blair the right person to administer them?
Well, Peter, that's a very leading question. I went to university with Tony Blair, and I wouldn't have put him in charge of anything, let alone something as fractious as this. I didn't have a great deal of faith in him when he was Prime Minister. So, no, Tony Blair is not the person. What you need, I'm afraid, is a very powerful proconsul who has armed might at his back, who can actually enforce both discipline, law and order. And I'm afraid it looks like colonialism if you do that. Somebody said to me yesterday, well, the only people who can sort this out are the Chinese. They can do the rebuilding and nobody will dare take them on if they go in there. But that's the last thing I'm afraid the free world wants, is to have an autocratic power like China sitting in the Eastern Mediterranean right next to Israel.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually in terms of Blair's role, but in terms of the speed and in terms of what needs to happen, I mean, if you were given the task or you were involved in the reconstruction task, what would be the things that need to happen in the next few days?
Well, I think you've got to find a community of the willing and able to actually deal with the security situation on the ground. And I think you've got to avoid actually putting yourself in the firing line. You've got to say, right, who wants to cooperate here? And you find out those people who have influence with the rest of the population. For example, one of the things that we thought we would do in Iraq after the end of the second Iraq war is that we would say to the imams and we would say, oddly enough, to the organized crime bosses, you've been running most of Iraq under Saddam, continue doing it, but we want to make you legitimate at some stage. That didn't survive 5 minutes with our army or the US Army, I'm afraid to say, but it was what we did in Sicily in World War II. We actually said to the Catholic Church, we need to sort out the Germans in the north of Italy. Can you and the mafia sort it out? And we'll come back in a year and make you legitimate. The mistake the Americans made is they got some organized crime bosses in from Atlantic City and New York to make sure the local mafia knew whose side they were on. And of course, it entrenched organized crime in Sicily right up until now, almost.
How much faith do you have in this deal? How optimistic are you that there will be peace in the Middle East, which is what we all want for all the innocent Palestinians and all the Israelis?
Until we have the ideological commitment to eradicate Israel, and until we have the confidence and safety measures in place that will make Israel feel safe in its environment, until the threats stop and there are sufficient guarantees to make sure that 7th of October 2023 isn't repeated, there is absolutely no chance for peace in this part of the world. The other problem, Peter, is you've got real demographic issues here. One of the things that I use as an indicator of trouble is if you have essentially 30% of your working age population between the ages of 18 and 28 and male, and there are 72 countries in the world like that today, 64 of them have trouble internally or with their neighbors. And you look at the demographics all around Israel right now, it's a nightmare in those terms. So I have no faith in this unless security guarantees can be provided for Israel, that they can be safe in that neighborhood, and people like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranians aren't seeking to eradicate a perfectly legitimate country from the face of the map.
Thank you, Chris. As always, Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry there, former NATO and Royal Navy commander, speaking to us about the deal in the Middle East. We will, of course, continue to cover that between now and 7. On Nigel Farage and his security, Bill's been in touch and says, surely the Speaker should be looking after the security of all MPs, or has he been told to back off? In fairness to the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, he has talked on a number of occasions about the security of MPs. He's only responsible within the parliamentary estate itself, the House of Commons and all the buildings around it, and in fairness, there is high security there. The problem is when politicians go to other places right around the country and elsewhere. He's not responsible for that. So, Bill, it's a good point, but I think Sir Lindsay Hoyle has actually done a good job in all of this. Lots more to discuss. We'll make sure you get your voice heard in the next hour as well. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. It's just gone 5 o'clock and there is loads to talk about this Friday evening. I want to talk about it with you. So give me a shout to let me know what you think of the following topics. The migrant guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage in a TikTok video. What kind of sentence should he get? Will he get? It'll be really interesting to see in a week's time when that sentence is handed down, especially in the context of the two-tier justice plaguing our nation and our justice system. The pro-Palestinian protesters, I've just spoken to one of them. She wasn't too happy with the interview. That has gone. They are going to have a big protest tomorrow. Again, you've got a peace deal in the Middle East. What are you protesting about? Let that deal settle down. Let the hostages be returned. You're getting lots of Palestinian prisoners back into Gaza, and we will see what happens there. Just call off the protest tomorrow. It's a very silly thing to do. And we're also talking about Sir Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, who suggested the chant from the river to the sea. That's, of course, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which so few people who actually chant that actually know. Well, that would be the eradication of Israel, a Jewish state. Apparently, that's not anti-Semitic, according to the Mayor of London. OK, then. Lots to discuss. We'll get the sport as well before 6 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk and make sure you get your voice on the air between now and 7. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Jodie's on the phones today and she will take your call and then we'll put as many people on the air as possible. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note at less than a minute, please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, let's speak to Chris Phillips. He is a former Detective Chief Inspector in the Met, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism... he is a former National Counter-Terrorism Security Officer as well and former head of that organisation. Chris, great to talk to you today. It's fascinating with Nigel Farage because we have seen this scumbag now found guilty of threatening Nigel Farage. It would be very hard not to find him guilty. Let's just take a look at this and I'll get your reaction. Fayaz Khan posted on his TikTok threatening Nigel Farage. This is what he said.
Not know me. I gonna come to England. I gonna mother passa man, you know. There's mother passa. Every country know me, Vamaya, mother passa. I'm TikToker. I'm not gang. I'm not mafia. I'm mafia's papa, mother passa manan. Rais Montana.
Well, unsurprisingly, this risk to Nigel Farage and the fact that the security, the state-funded security has been taken away from him. I used to be a special advisor. I worked in government. I worked for the Home Secretary. I worked for the Northern Ireland Secretary. Both of those people always have 24-hour security. We'll talk to Chris about that in a second. But it was about a month ago that Zia Youssef, Reform's head of policy, spoke about Nigel Farage's security being cut. He spoke to Mike Graham. Let's just remind ourselves of that.
About it, but I think it is in the public interest that they know that just about 2 weeks ago, the authorities slashed the size of Nigel's security detail by 75%. The authorities cut Nigel's security detail by 75% 2 weeks ago. That's why so many of us around Nigel are so worried. Now, I want to be clear and reassure people who A, support Nigel, but B, all right-thinking people in this country who believe in sensible democratic politics in this country, that thankfully donors stepped in and have shored up that security, so Nigel is well protected. But the Prime Minister knows exactly what he's doing. This is a Prime Minister who's circling the drain, who, according to a poll this week, is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record. According to a poll this week, the majority of Labour members want to be replaced, and he's lashing out against the man that he knows. Starmer knows he cannot beat Nigel at the ballot box, so he's embarked on the most, I want to say it again, extraordinary, coordinated attacks to incite violence against the man who is the bookmaker's favourite to replace him at number 10 Downing Street. It's disgusting, and he should apologise.
Chris, I am no expert in this. I know a little bit about it. You're quite literally an expert. What level of security should Nigel Farage have, do you think?
Well, there's a big difficulty with Nigel Farage because he is a leader of a very small party, and quite normally you wouldn't imagine that a person like that would be at high risk. However, you have to be realistic, understand what's happening in the country. The risk of assassination has grown over the years, and he is at the forefront of some upsetting some people that perhaps are more violent than others. And if you look at it on a pure risk basis, I would suggest that he's probably the most at-risk person in the country. And yet, Peter, we've got ex-MPs, ex-prime ministers like Theresa May walking around with a full detail of police security. Absolutely ridiculous. No one is likely to try to do any harm to Theresa May, and yet she's got the security, and people who are at risk are finding it very difficult to get it.
The Prime Minister's get it for life. It used to be that Northern Ireland secretaries got it for life, then it was taken away at various points as peace got better. But having seen those officers in action, the very brave men and women of the Royalty and Specialist Protection branch of the Metropolitan Police and the CPU, the Close Protection Unit of the Police Service of Northern Ireland, I worked with them all the time. They do a sometimes quite boring but always very risky job. They do it very, very well, but it's not their choice who they protect. And as you say, it should be about the threat level, shouldn't it? Because we have people like for example, you could argue that the Chief Rabbi, who has specialist protection from the Metropolitan Police, I mean, he is the leader of a small faith, but clearly he is at huge risk because of the level of anti-Semitism in this country. Sir Ephraim Mervis is a great man, and he is someone who has, rightly has security. His wife Valerie is a very nice woman who watches this show, and that's correct. For him to have that level of security. The problem, I would argue, with Nigel Farage is it's not about how prominent he is in public life. He is very prominent in public life, and if you just look at the numbers of Reform UK, yes, they're small in regard to the MPs, but the impact he has and the profile he has is absolutely huge, isn't it, Chris?
It is huge, and as I said, he is dealing with subjects that many people don't like to talk about. So he is, I would suggest, at the highest level of risk. I would be asking some severe questions of those making the decisions on who is protected and who isn't, because he does seem to me to be at the highest level of risk and should be protected by the state.
Chris, we just had some breaking news, and that's that a senior Hamas terrorist has said that a ceasefire would not be possible without Donald Trump. The person also said they're ready to step away from governing Gaza, which I think we can all say is good news, that those Hamas terrorists will not be governing Gaza any further. From a security perspective in this country, Chris, I've just been speaking to someone about an hour ago who says that she believes that there's still a case for pro-Palestinian protests on the streets. What do you think of that?
Well, we have got groups of people who just want to protest, and they've got the time. We used to call them rent-a-crowd, and they want to protest all the time. Now, it's quite right that people are given the opportunity to protest, but that doesn't mean to say they should hold up the whole of society with these protests week after week. And also, when we have protests that have literally broken the law, I think those groups of people should be prevented from doing that. It's crazy. It's costing the taxpayer huge amounts of money, and police officers are being taken away from their core job.
Yeah, listen, I believe in the right to protest, and I'll tell you one organisation that doesn't believe in the right to protest, and that is Hamas. People who have been protesting against them have been murdered, and their bodies have been left at the doors of their families. But this is a senior Hamas terrorist, Dr. Bassem Naim, has said that a ceasefire would not be possible without Donald Trump. He also said they're ready to step away from governing Gaza, which I think we can all say is good news. The less involvement Hamas have in the Middle East, the better. In fact, they should have no involvement whatsoever. I wonder what you make as well from the asylum perspective, Chris, of the fact that the Taliban are apparently selling £40 fake death threats for asylum seekers to dupe UK authorities.
We know the system's being played, Peter. There's no doubt about that. The sheer numbers of people coming across, they're not all at risk. Most, I would suggest, are not at risk at all, and they're simply coming over because they want to live in the UK. Some of them, Peter, are coming over specifically to commit crime, and that's quite a high number. And I would suggest that some of them are being sent over to be future terrorists. There's no doubt about that. We as a country should be able to weed out those people very quickly. And this man, that's just been threatening and just been convicted. Clearly, he is not a desirable person to have in the UK, and he should be dealt with firmly here and then immediately extradited to Sweden and then back to Afghanistan.
Chris, thank you. That's Chris Phillips there, former Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police. He's also the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Thank you to him for that. Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Simon. He says, why can we not use the Afghans that help the British Army in these processing centres? Simon, I think that's a very good idea, and I think there are a number of Afghans that I would be, if we are to take asylum seekers, I'd be very, very happy to take some of the translators that helped our brave men and women in Afghanistan. If we're going to say, right, we're a compassionate country, we're going to take some asylum seekers, people from Ukraine, we did that. Loads of people took them into their homes. If they're translators, for example, I know one translator, in fact, I've interviewed him, who cannot get out of Afghanistan. He is exactly the kind of person we should be helping on a humanitarian basis, and loads of people should not be coming here. Lots of the protests as well in regard to Emily, who I spoke to a little bit earlier. James in Essex says most of those people in the Palestine marches have no idea what it's about. You ask 90% of them what from the river to the sea means, they'll be clueless. They're on there because they're jumping on the bandwagon. The river is the Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean, but do they actually know that? It's a very good point. Mike says, actually, I'll read that a little bit later on. The protests that still carry on, says John in Blackpool, as it's not about peace in Gaza, but the freedom of the Palestinians to live normal lives as we enjoy. I can never see that happening, to be honest. Let's speak to Dan in Liverpool, who wants to have his say on this. Dan, you're very welcome to the programme. 0344 499 1000.
Oh, thank you very much. I have a lot of Jewish family members and a lot of Jewish friends, and they've described most of the people like, I'm going to be respectful, the young lady you were speaking to earlier, as capo. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
I'm not familiar with that term now, and we just need to be quite careful about the terms we're using, but what would they, how would they refer to her?
So it's basically the Jewish people in Auschwitz who were ratting out the other Jewish inmates. So it's
okay, I'm just going to be really careful here. I don't want to defame Emily, and I don't want you to defame Emily, Dan. But listen, we'll just dissociate ourselves from those comments and make sure that we don't put them on Emily. But Dan, from your perspective, what do you think of people who are Jewish or indeed are not Jewish, who go in those pro-Palestinian marches, Dan?
I generally think some of them, I want to say they've got good intentions. I truthfully do believe that. But I think some of them are misguided from education, from the way they've been brought up, and the information from Sky, BBC that they've been given. And that's why I don't want to hate them. I genuinely do think some of them have been misguided.
Okay, Dan, thanks for your thoughts there. Appreciate that. That's Dan in Liverpool. Next minute, I would say these asylum seekers are fleeing war, torture and danger, but all have new phones, TikTok accounts and can afford tattoos. When are we going to wake up to this madness? Why don't the UN do something useful and coordinate help for the real refugees in war-torn countries rather than recognising a Palestinian state? Nick, couldn't agree more. Also, this guy with the AK-47 on his face, the tattoo, he came from Sweden. He came from Sweden to France and then came across, I don't know how he got to maybe a few countries in the meantime, but he's lived in Sweden since 2019. He is not fleeing war. Sweden is not at war. Damien says, just want to say, oh no, I'm not going to read that because you're being far too nice, Damien, and my head will explode. Mick in Wallington says, it's way past the time officials in the public sector are held to proper account. Lessons will be learnt is not good enough anymore. We are mugs, and that is our global reputation. I should say thank you, Damien, for your very kind message, but it's best not to read it out. John says, all immigrants without any proof and documents of their identity should be taken out of the UK. Mike in Swansea saying the idiot threatening Nigel Farage was doing it on a dinghy in the Channel. Why on earth wasn't he arrested immediately? What is going on in the UK? It is baffling. Mac in Glasgow says, well done on the lady who challenged the London Mayor for saying that from the river to the sea is not anti-Semitic. That was Susan Hall, who is the Conservative leader on the London Assembly. Matt continues, this talks about killing all Jewish people. It's racist and it's disgusting. Sadiq Khan should hold his head in shame and resign if he has any humanity. The amount of anti-Semitism is awful and Jewish people do not deserve this. I thought the days of anti-Semitism against Jewish people ended after World War II. Great show, says Mac in Glasgow. The very sad reality is that in 2023 and 2024, as the Community Safety Trust told us, there was a real peak in the huge level of anti-Semitism, hatred, racism against Jewish people. Nell's in West Yorkshire. Nell, you're very welcome to the programme. Neil, apologies, I can't read. It's my age. Neil, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Thank you very much, Peter. I think the point's being missed in a lot of instances as to why the protests are going to continue. It's not about pro-Palestine. It's not even about the sort of anti-Semitism thing. The agitators, if you look at all these protests, you know, there's so-and-so against racism, Socialist Workers' Party, and all these useful idiots. It's the Socialist Workers' Party and that sort of people that are creating and prolonging these events, you know, and agitating. I don't think it's anything to do with Palestine whatsoever. There's just a lot of useful idiots being brought into it.
I do find it interesting how those on the far left, those who would talk about, you know, who would call me a transphobe, I would imagine, for saying that a man's a man and a woman's a woman, how they are so in favour of the pro-Palestinian cause. I mean, that's fine. If you want to be in favour of the pro-Palestinian cause, that's fine, but I'm going to question you robustly about that. But, I mean, Hamas and actually Fatah, who run the West Bank, you know, they would have no truck with trans people, they would have no truck with gay people, no truck with any minority, essentially, and no truck with protest. They wouldn't allow freedom of association on the streets. I find it utterly weird that these people come out in the streets every couple of weeks and protest in this way for people who hate them.
I think the thing is with socialist work, you probably know as much about them as I do, but they're a Trotskyite movement that believe in agitation. You know, and change revolution through agitation. In other words, free everybody off, you know, and get them fighting, and then they try and the socialist way to try to come and, you know, pick it up from the embers of it.
I know what you mean, Neil. I also know I'm never ever going to buy their newspaper. Neil, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Ray in Newcastle upon Tyne says, I've made this point before, but I believe that as soon as these boat people cross the border in the middle of the channel, they're leaving a safe country, the EU, so they forfeit the right to claim asylum in this country. They should be escorted from the Kent coast to a train to take them back to France via the Channel Tunnel. Taff in Dover says, how many times has Nigel Farage been attacked compared to Angela Rayner? Farage has been attacked numerous times and had his security reduced. Angela Rayner goes to the back benches and keeps the security. Taff, you're right, and there has been a huge controversy over Angela Rayner and her boyfriend Sam Tarry, former MP, who has been apparently, according to The Sun on Sunday, using the taxpayer-funded security cars to move things. He is not being in any way protected, but she is still for another few weeks. What usually happens after you've stepped down from the position is that you keep those cars and things for another few weeks. So I would imagine they've probably gone now, but he absolutely, if that was the case, and I'm sure The Sun on Sunday is on very solid ground, that he should not have been escorted on those. He should not have been moving anything in those. Those cars shouldn't have been used at all by him solely. That is completely incorrect. And if Angela Rayner needed to be protected, she should have been present at that time. I would never have crossed my mind, nor the minds of the families of the politicians that I worked for, to use those brave officers and their bulletproof vehicles for anything other than transporting the person who is being protected. Leslie says, how is it Greece are deporting migrants back to Afghanistan, but we can't? Greece aren't abiding by the ECHR. Why should we? Very good point, Leslie. And time again, we're told we've got to abide by the ECHR. Well, we don't, because we haven't always done that. David Cameron was told by the European Court of Human Rights to give prisoners the votes. He did not. And guess what? The world continued to turn. We're going to talk to Candace Holsworth in a second, the writer and broadcaster, about the man who burned the Quran outside the Turkish consulate. He has won his appeal. Also a burqa ban. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, planning fines of £2,600 to stop Islamic separatism. That's something Sarah Poachin, we spoke to a bit earlier, actually agrees with. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
So nobody told you before you got on the bus you can't wear a football shirt to drive the bus. When you got back to the depot, was that when they fired you or what?
On Monday morning, they sent an email over, my agency did.
Right.
They sent an email saying regarding the events on Saturday the 4th of October,
right,
we'll be dismissing you due to a uniform policy. The video has circulated all over social media.
So, like, a few million people have seen this now?
I didn't think it would go so big, but it's quite a surreal experience, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including someone who is Scottish, apparently. That's all the information we have. Why would they pull Nigel's protection? What reason did they give for doing it? Well, we don't know. We're not privy to those conversations. We know there's a committee that assesses the risk, that talks about all of this, that decides who gets protection and who doesn't. We know that Nigel Farage did get protection. Then it was reduced by 75%. That's what Zia Youssef told Mike Graham about a month ago. Let's talk to Candice Holdsworth about this and many other issues. She's the writer and broadcaster. Candice, great to have you on the programme again. We've heard about this migrant guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage in the TikTok video, yet his security has been reduced, and I know from a senior Reform UK person, not Sarah Puchin actually I was speaking to earlier, though she did talk about her personal security, another senior person in Reform who we've been in touch with at the moment, that all senior visible Reform UK people are thinking about their personal security at the moment.
It's appalling. I think so many political figures have said this now, that they feel... have you still got me?
Yeah, you're still there. Keep going.
Good. Yeah, I think so many political figures now feel like it's becoming a more dangerous environment to be very outspoken, to be very well known. I mean, Nigel Farage is very famous, and you've had numerous people throw milkshakes at him thinking it's acceptable to do that. And stuff like that can escalate. You know, a sort of environment can grow around a political figure where people feel emboldened to attack them. I mean, you've got Mike Freer as well, who said he's stepping back from politics because he just can't handle all the threats. It's a real issue. So I'm very, very, very glad that there was a hard line taken against this guy who issued death threats, because no political figure in our country should ever, ever, ever have to fear for their lives.
It'll be very, very interesting to see what sentence he receives. We will, of course, tell you what that is here on Talk. Tell us your thoughts, Candice, and maybe you could just explain this issue to us for a little bit as well, about Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, proposing a burqa ban, fines of £2,600 to stop what she says is Islamic separatism. In France, of course, they banned the burqa as well.
Yes, yeah, France has real sort of hardcore secularism, and they enforce it in the public sphere. And Italy is quite a socially conservative country. Me, I'm more of a libertarian. I think that Britain does have a more liberal tradition when it comes to these things. I absolutely detest the burqa. I agree with Sarah Pochin. I think it's a misogynistic garment. I don't know if I would ban it, though. Like I say, I'm quite liberal when it comes to these things. However, I do not think that we should ever be afraid of calling it out for what it is. And I think that we have in the past kind of been afraid to do that, to say exactly what we think of it. And I think that in doing so, we've sort of emboldened the most extreme elements, the misogynistic elements in Islam. And I mean, if you look at the two most monstrously misogynistic societies, Iran and Afghanistan, that's where women are forced to wear the burqa. But in most other Muslim societies, it's very rare. People don't wear the burqa. It really is the most extreme elements. And I remember when Boris Johnson made that joke a while ago about women wearing burqas looking like letterboxes. And fine, you can say it was a crass, tasteless joke, but it was almost like you couldn't joke about it, and you couldn't critique it. And I think that is what we as a society should do. We should make it very clear that we do not agree with this garment, that no woman in our society should ever have to obscure herself in public like that.
I would love someone to take a tally of how many jokes are made about Christianity I would love someone to talk about comedians making jokes about Christianity, saying things that are really offensive to many Christians, and getting away with it, and that's fine, and that's accepted in our society, and that's the way things are. Yet if you criticise Islam, if you say that certain things about bits of Islam, like for example the burqa, are wrong, that they shouldn't, or even make a joke about it, well, that is a huge and thing that so many people seize upon. I wonder if we could talk about, I mean, I'm not going to go around burning Qurans. I'm going to make a prediction that Candace Holsworth hasn't burned a Quran and has no intention of doing so. But there was a man who did so outside the Turkish consulate. He's won his appeal. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so that's fascinating. That's such a good point you made, because we're journalists. We discuss ideas, we debate them, we don't set them on fire. Hamit Kozgun did choose to do that as a form of political protest. He's a Turkish dissident. He's a huge critic of the Erdogan regime in Turkey. And like many people, they feel, from that country, they feel that Turkey has departed from its secular traditions. And so he decided what he was going to do is he was going to take the Quran and he was going to burn it as a way of saying, I'm critiquing this as an idea. No idea is sacred. And what happened whilst he was doing that is a couple of men attacked him. One of them was brandishing a knife. So what happened, he was prosecuted, and this was a bizarre prosecution, for creating public disorder, because whilst he was burning the Quran, someone attacked him. I mean, it's the most bizarre reasoning you could think of. Anyway, he appealed that, and he has actually won his appeal. And the judge has said he did not create public disorder. He did it in the form of a political protest. And he has the right to do that with our free speech traditions in our country. So it was really, really fascinating, because in the previous judgment, they made no mention of free expression, no mention of free speech. But in this one, they explicitly said that. And so I think a lot of people, like you said, they're not for burning books. They would never, ever do something like that. But in our society, you are allowed to criticize religion.
Candace, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Candace Holsworth there, the writer and broadcaster. Thanks everybody who's been in touch as well. Leslie says, I'm sick of seeing Yvette Cooper pontificating about Gaza. What did she achieve to stop the boats? 10,000 arrivals since the one-in, one-out deal. Leslie also asked, do the Israelis know if their loved ones have survived the tunnels, or do they have the harrowing wait to see us hostages are finally released? Essentially, yes. We think we know that 20 of the hostages are still alive, of the 48 that are still in Gaza. Now the rest, 28, we think have been murdered by Hamas terrorists. The interesting and horrific thing with that is, where are the bodies? And Hamas have already said, and other organisations aligned to Hamas have already said, Leslie, that they will return the bodies, but that could be difficult. It's interesting, I was in Israel about a month ago. I've mentioned that on air before, and we spoke to various people, various Israelis who were saying, including the former National Security Advisor, and he said it could be tricky to actually find the bodies, because if that area has been bombed, or alternatively, if the terrorist who murdered that hostage buried the body, for example, and then that terrorist has been killed, well, the knowledge base of where the bodies are could now be gone. So yes, this is a time of great relief for many of those families of the hostages who will be returned. Even a little bit, I'm sure, for those getting the bodies back. At least a proper funeral and burial can be given to those who've been murdered by Hamas terrorists. The problem is still knowing exactly who's alive, exactly who's dead, where the bodies are, and whether the bodies can be repatriated to Israel. It's a horrendous time. These people have been through absolute hell. The Palestinians as well have had a very, very rough time, obviously, since the war. There are many innocent civilians who have died. There are many who will want to get back to building Gaza, whatever Gaza becomes. That will be something that we will look at very, very closely and see whether there can be peace there. Everybody wants peace. What we don't want is Hamas anywhere near Gaza in any form whatsoever. It should be dismantled. It should go. And I hope that this peace deal ends with that happening. So thank you to Leslie for that query. Happy to answer that point. Alex in Liverpool on migration says it's very simple. They're illegally here. No if, but maybe. They shouldn't be here, end of. If they want to come, that's great. Go via the official channel. Please can we get out of the circus of power ASAP. Thanks as ever for keeping me sane on my drive home from work. Alex in Liverpool, who is one of the car dwellers in his car, dwelling in his car on the way back during Talk Drive. Well, Alex, thank you for that message. And just one final one before the break, and we'll hear a number of your opinions afterwards. So if you want to get your voice in the air, 034449911000. Kevin says banning the burqa might be a two-edged sword. We know there are strict Muslims that force their wives and daughters to wear it. If it is banned, they might no longer be allowed outside, becoming prisoners in their own home. Very interesting thought. Haven't thought about that, and I love our viewers and listeners because they always tell me things I haven't thought about and things that I hadn't considered. I'll hear from more of you in just a second. We're going to take a load of calls before we get the sport from the Sun. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Some breaking news, and a massive blast has been reported at a military explosives facility in Tennessee. Officials say there are some confirmed deaths, but they haven't given any further details. That is the breaking news here on Drive, that there is a massive blast that has been reported at a military explosives facility in Tennessee. Any further detail we get on that, we will of course bring to you. Tim is in Surrey and has given me a shout on 034449911000. Tim, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yes, good afternoon. I attended the rally for anti-Semitism, against anti-Semitism last night, opposite Downing Street. And Judy Hartley-Brewer and Camilla McTominay were two of the speakers. And I'm glad they were there, because neither of them are Jewish, and nor am I. But it saddens me just hugely how parts of this country have descended into the most barbaric levels of intolerance and anti-Semitism. It's not that long ago that the Battle of Cable Street, which is where, you know, the Labour Party defended a lot of Jews who were being attacked by the brown shirts. And yet today, you know, almost weekly, London and other streets.
Yeah, and another one tomorrow that Emily Hilton is going on. I think you heard that interview, Tim. What did you make of it? Maybe I was too harsh on her.
I was speechless. I could not believe that a woman married to an Israeli could speak those things. I could not believe that anyone could in any way sanction these anti-Semitic, and they are, and Suella Braverman was right, they are hate marches.
Just to say, there's no suggestion Emily Hilton is anti-Semitic. Of course, she is Jewish herself. But this is the point, Tim, that I would make in regard to Emily Hilton, and I tried to make it to her, is there are literally people on these marches holding up signs supporting organisations that say they want to kill every single Jew. Why would Jewish people go on them? I just don't understand that. I just can't get my head around it, Tim. Can you?
Well, no, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I can only think there's some kind of sick virtue signalling going on here. Quite what her husband thinks of it all is anyone's guess.
Well, I don't know. I've never interviewed him, and he could speak for himself. But Tim, listen, thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate them. Liam's in Bedfordshire and has some thoughts on Farage and this TikToker who has put this hatred, this guy with an AK-47 face tattoo, found guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage. Liam, your thoughts on this? How are you doing?
Yeah, hi Peter, thank you. Look, I'm surprised, or I'm assuming, like Sarah Poachin did earlier, that when he landed on the boat that he came, he was making these claims before he arrived. My point would be, if you commit a crime country, then that country has the right to sentence you and to imprison you and to give you the sentence that's right in the country. So if you're a drug dealer in Thailand, you expect to stay in a Thai prison, right?
Yeah.
We've had those over the years. Whilst it's coming at our expense, and that kind of sits in the core a little bit, but I think we do need to detain this man. We need to give him the treatment because it sends a message to everybody else. But on his release, he must be deported.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, Liam, actually. I think I'm with you on this, in that some people say, right, you know, foreign nationals, any foreign national, whether an asylum seeker or whatever, commits a crime, send them back to their country immediately. But actually, I do think, even though it's a cost to the taxpayer, I do think we should imprison them in this country, and then as soon as they're released, send them back. That's what I think should happen, because we could well be in a situation where someone is from, let's say for the sake of argument, they're from, you know, Egypt, and they murder someone here. 25 years would be a mandatory life sentence that they would serve here if that was, let's say for sake of argument, that sentence was given. But if we let them serve, you know, a year or not at all and just sent them back to Egypt, where is the guarantee that the Egyptian authorities or any other country's authorities would actually imprison them, especially when they had not convicted them of the crime that had happened in this country? And that's a big thing for me, Liam. Exactly.
So look, a couple of other quick points would be, look, this fantastic thing that's happened that Trump's managed to negotiate. Is there a plan, though, by Hamas and those on that side that he's only going to be in power for a few more years? What happens when he leaves? I'll leave that point there.
Yeah.
And then I was listening to Emily Hilton in your interview earlier, and obviously the previous caller. Israel itself, don't forget, isn't completely behind Netanyahu.
Yeah,
so
correct.
I suspect that she and her husband probably sit in the camp that doesn't like Netanyahu.
And that's fine, and it's perfectly legitimate. In fact, there's some statistics that would suggest that up to 75% of Israelis don't like Netanyahu, and that's absolutely fine. But when I asked her, you know, name one thing that Israel has done since 1948 that she approved of, it was the thing she chose was a situation where Israel gives some land back to the Palestinians. So I think people will read into that what they think. Liam, listen, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate them. We've just spotted this on Twitter. It's an interesting video that we have, and this is from Paul Novak, who is from the Trades Union Congress, and it is in regard to what Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has said. Let's just play this.
Voting reform doesn't make you a racist. Worrying about your wages, your bills and the cost of living crisis doesn't make you a racist. And wanting a fair, sensible approach to migration doesn't make you a racist. But I tell you what does make you a racist. Threatening to deport people who came to this country to live and work, no matter how long they've been here, no matter how hard they've worked, how much they've contributed, or whether or not they've raised their family. Or walking around one of our major cities and complaining that you don't see any white faces, presumably because both your eyes and your mind are closed. And equating being British to being a white, privately educated Tory xenophobe. So here's the truth. If you talk like a racist, if you walk around with your little camera making films that make you sound like a racist, you probably are a racist.
OK, so that's Paul Novak there of the TUC calling, in terms, Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick racists for what they've said and done. I'd be really interested how they have responded to that video, which has just come out in the last few minutes, and we're asking both Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage on the programme before 7 or their offices to give us some sort of statement on that. I just want to play that one more time, actually, just so you can listen to it and hear what Paul Novak from the Trades Union Congress has said.
Voting reform doesn't make you a racist. Worrying about your wages, your bills and the cost of living crisis doesn't make you a racist. And wanting a fair, sensible approach to migration doesn't make you a racist. But I tell you what does make you a racist. Threatening to deport people who came to this country to live and work, no matter how long they've been here, no matter how hard they've worked, how much they've contributed, or whether or not they've raised their family. Or walking around one of our major cities and complaining that you don't see any white faces, presumably because both your eyes and your mind are closed. And equating being British to being a white, privately educated Tory xenophobe. So here's the truth. If you talk like a racist, if you walk around with your little camera making films that make you sound like a racist, you probably are a racist.
I mean, my initial reaction to that would be that that is highly defamatory against Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick, and I am fairly sure they will be consulting legal counsel on that. Now, Paul Novak, who is, of course, the General Secretary of the Trades Union Congress, put that out today. He presumably stands over it. The interesting point on Jenrick is that factually, if you're in an area and you don't see another white face for 90 minutes and then you're in an area for 90 minutes and then you comment on that, that doesn't make you racist if you're stating a fact. If it says an area is badly integrated. And the fact is that the area he was talking about, a lot of people said, well, he's wrong. Well, if you're literally in somewhere, in an area, and don't see another white face for 90 minutes and then say, I was in this area and didn't see another white face for 90 minutes, well, that's a factual piece of information. It's not saying that that place is bad or wrong or, I mean, he did say badly integrated. Well, clearly it was if he didn't see another white face. But I do wonder how that makes you racist to state facts. And I am very, very worried about what Paul Novak is saying there from the Trades Union Congress. We'll get reaction to this. We're asking both Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage if they'll come on before 7 o'clock, or we'll get some reaction from them. So stay with us here on Talk for all of that, including the sport next.
The way to deal with it is quite simply to detain every single illegal immigrant securely behind wire until such time as we can return them to whence they came or they ask to go back. Now, that does require significant legal changes, but this government doesn't seem to want to be fair, neither did the previous, want to take those legal, do that legal amendment, withdraw from the ECHR and so on. They didn't want to do it. It was all too contentious for them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who's been in touch. We are going to talk about those very strong racism allegations that have been made against Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick by the leader of the Trades Union Congress, the big union, that is Paul Nowak. We'll talk about that more in the next hour. We are talking to both Jenrick and Farage's offices about either getting them on or getting some reaction to that. We'll bring that to you as soon as we get it here at Talk Towers. But in the meantime, let's have a look at the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Well, I am delighted that the man who is taking us through all of this is Jake Sanders, the sports news editor at The Sun Sport. How are you doing?
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. England have beaten Wales 3-0 in the friendly last night. It was a dominating display. But Thomas Tuchel had a pop at the Wembley crowd. What was that about?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. Obviously, it was a really quick start from England, 3-0 up in 20 minutes. And, it was all going rosy. And England sort of took their foot off the gas slightly. And the last sort of hour, especially the second half, was quite dull, which is normal with a qualifier to come on Tuesday, a more important game. And Tuchel surprisingly slammed the fans and, silent atmosphere. It very interesting, not the best way to go about things, sort of having a pop at your own fans.
Don't slag off the fans. Also, it's a friendly and you're 3-0 up.
Fans are paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot to shout about in the second half. They were, loud and cheering and singing in the first half. Maybe he should have had a look at his players to, give them something to shout about.
Never complain about the public is a piece of advice I would give Thomas Tuchel. You'll never win. Or civil servants when you work with them. There are far more of them than there are of you, Thomas. In other international football news, Chelsea star man Estevao has had quite a week. How's he got on playing for Brazil?
Someone who knows exactly how to entertain is Estevao. He scored a last-minute winner for Chelsea against Liverpool last weekend, and on the international stage for Brazil, scored twice against South Korea, and we've not had a Brazilian star in the Premier League for quite a while, so maybe he's, the next cab off the rank.
Does he talk a lot to the media, or does he take an Estevao of silence?
I've not heard him speak much. I doubt very much for an 18-year-old that's just moved to London he speaks any English at all.
I'm sure he can communicate in other ways. As it's World Mental Health Day, some sporting stars have been using their platform to speak up. One in particular, Jude Bellingham. Tell us about him.
So yeah, this is obviously World Mental Health Day, a very sensitive subject, and it's great to see a star name like Jude Bellingham talking about fellow athletes, urging athletes and footballers to speak up more, and basically saying that just because we live these luxurious lives and we've got a load of money and we drive these cars and we play football for a living, it doesn't mean that it's all sort of rosy. And he was talking about this macho image, basically saying I don't need help when maybe he could have. And it's a very good thing for someone of his stature, an England star, a Real Madrid star, to be urging other people to speak out.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good message to everyone, but especially young men as well. We know those suicide rates are just far, far, far too high. One suicide is too many. Listen, a nice weekend of football to look forward to. What are you looking forward to yourself?
Not loads in terms of football. It's obviously international break. England are not playing until Tuesday. Ireland are playing tomorrow. So there isn't a great deal on. If you're a lower league fan, there's sort of lower league football and non-league football. But in terms of the big hitters, there is not going to be many on show on Saturday and Sunday.
Which is why my show is on until 1 o'clock tomorrow. It's usually 12:30, but it's 1 o'clock tomorrow because there is less football on. But listen, Jake, thank you. Have a lovely weekend. Jake Sanders is the sports news editor at The Sun Sport. I want to talk a bit more now about Nigel Farage, about the threats that have been made to him, about this absolute scumbag who has been convicted of threatening to kill Nigel Farage. Let's have a look at what he has been saying on his TikTok.
You not know me. I gonna come to England. I gonna mother passa, man. You know, there's mother passa. Every country know me. Vamaya mother passa. I'm TikToker. I'm not gang. I'm not mafia. I'm mafia's papa, mother passa, man. Rais Montana.
Yeah, it seems like a horrible, horrible person, Fayez Khan, 26. He chose not to give evidence in his trial, in which he was accused of threatening the Reform UK leader between the 2nd and 15th of October last year. Again, it takes a year for these things to get to court. It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens to him. Interesting as well, tomorrow I was talking about my show tomorrow on between 10 and 1 tomorrow, and indeed on Sunday. The Shadow Foreign Secretary, Priti Patel, will be joining me on Sunday, and one thing I want to ask her about actually is these pro-Palestinian protests in London. I know Matthew in Cheshire, who's been waiting very patiently to get on the air, apologies to keep you waiting, Matthew, has some thoughts on this. What would you like to say?
Hiya, Peter. First one, before I go on to that, if a man of colour walks into the town and doesn't see a white person, doesn't see another man of colour, does that make him a racist?
Very good point. No is the answer. If you're stealing facts, and you're saying, you know, you go into, there's the room beside me, the control room. You go in there and you don't see someone of a certain race or whatever, and you say, well, actually, there are a number of people in there, and none of them is white, or none of them is non-white. I mean, those are facts, aren't they? And that's what Jenrick was saying.
Yeah, it was just to pick up on it while I was waiting. It's like saying I walked into a room full of men. Does that mean that we're all sexist? Yeah,
by stealing facts. And this is the problem, Matthew, because I do not think Robert Jenrick is a racist at all. I think he is saying things that need to be said. I think Nigel Farage isn't a racist. I think he's saying things that need to be said. If he was a racist, I would be the first person saying that, Matthew. And the fact is that they're often, not all the time, often stating facts, and some of those facts are not liked by the Paul Nowaks of this world, who, by calling them a racist, it's just an easy way. It's just an easy way of trying to defeat someone's argument, isn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, it's been going on for years, but now people are starting to see through it and the stick of it, because they're just twisting the truth. It's not racism or anything like that. But the other point I wanted to make is this whole secretary. She's a jellyfish. She needs to grow a spine, because if Sammy Robinson was doing a march this weekend and whatever reason had been called, she would stop it.
In fairness, Tommy Robinson did do a big march a few weeks ago and it wasn't stopped.
No, but if there was a right-wing march going on this weekend over an issue, and then certain countries had done a peace deal over it, it'd be stopped. And Israel and Palestine, the Palestinians, Hamas, they've come to a deal. Now all these people have still got. I listened to the interview you had before with that girl. It was utter tripe. At the end of the day, these people are going on the march to say no more. Enough's enough. You've had your moment. Let Israel and Hamas sort it out. And then if it falls through, then by all means march. But if you go marching tomorrow, everyone will be arrested. We won't just arrest you, we will fine you the cost of what it's cost to police it, because enough's enough. It's not in the national interest. It's inciting violence. It's derogatory to the Jewish people of the country. Enough's enough. She just needs to say, no, OK, you've had your moment, let's call it a day.
Well, listen, I'm someone who doesn't want to stop people having the right to protest, but I do think some of what you're saying is absolutely right. Listen, thank you, Matthew. That's Matthew in Cheshire there. Thanks also to Stephen Birmingham, who says all the people saying that Jenrick is racist would not move their families into these badly integrated areas, such as Handsworth and Smallheath in Birmingham. Steve is in Birmingham himself, which are not only majority non-white populations, but also do not resemble typical British neighbourhoods in terms of shops, schools, healthcare services. If the union boss really wanted to make his point, he would film himself walking about in Handsworth while extolling the success of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism has failed, I believe. That is a fact. David in Oxford says, it's really interesting to note the trade union guy not calling out Zia Youssef, who has more to say about immigration than Farage and Jenrick combined. Wonder why. Dawn in Chelmsford says the left of this country are really throwing the racist description around because they are afraid of Nigel Farage and right-wing Tories. It's so predictable, it's so pathetic, says Dawn in Chelmsford. And Fayaz Khan, who's the scumbag with the AK-47 tattoo on his cheek, Steve says Fayaz Khan will get a lesser sentence than Lucy Connolly, guaranteed. Lucy Connolly got 31 months. We will see. We will tell you as soon as he gets that sentence. We think it'll happen in about a week's time, and we will bring you all of that, of course, here on Talk. Whatever you want to talk about between now and 7 o'clock, I want you to give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. This video from Paul Nowak, who is the head of the Trades Union Congress, is extraordinary. In it, he calls Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick racist. We've reached out to their offices. We're asking them what do they think of these allegations, and we'll get your thoughts on all of it too in just a few minutes' time. So stay with us here on Talk and get your call in during the break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I am Peter Cardwell. This is Talk Drive. You're very welcome to the programme if you're just joining us, or thank you for your company for the last couple of hours. I'm here until 7 today. Then tomorrow and Sunday from 10 until 1. On Sunday, we're going to have the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Priti Patel. She's going to be joining me. I wonder what she makes of the big story that's broken in the last half an hour. That is that the Trades Union Congress, TUC head, Paul Nowak, has done a video where he accuses both Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, and Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, of being racists. We will play you that video in just a second, and we're trying anyway to get reaction from both Robert Jenrick and indeed Nigel Farage before 7 o'clock. We'll bring you all their response when we get it. We also know multiple people have been killed and others are missing after an explosion at a Tennessee military munitions plant. We're talking about the migrant guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage in a TikTok video. Also, protests going ahead tomorrow in London, another march, even though we know that there is a comprehensive peace deal in the Middle East. What do you make of all of this? What would you like to say? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, send me or pick up the phone and give me a ring. 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss here on Talk. Well, I just want to remind you what the head of the TUC, the Trades Union Congress, the General Secretary, Paul Nowak, has posted on social media attacking both the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, and the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. This is what he said. We're going to get reaction from the Shadow Home Office Minister. Actually, Jenrick is his boss. Jenrick's not his boss. The Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, is his boss. But Matt Vickers is going to give his reaction in just a second. Let's see what Paul Nowak has been saying about Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage.
Voting reform doesn't make you a racist. Worrying about your wages, your bills and the cost of living crisis doesn't make you a racist. And wanting a fair, sensible approach to migration doesn't make you a racist. But I tell you what does make you a racist. Threatening to deport people who came to this country to live and work, no matter how long they've been here, no matter how hard they've worked, how much they've contributed, or whether or not they've raised their family. Or walking around one of our major cities and complaining that you don't see any white faces, presumably because both your eyes and your mind are closed. And equating being British to being a white, privately educated Tory xenophobe. So here's the truth. If you talk like a racist, if you walk around with your little camera making films that make you sound like a racist, you probably are a racist.
Well, that is an extraordinary series of claims from Paul Nowak. I'm sure Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage would treat it with the contempt it deserves. I wonder what Matt Vickers thinks. He is a Member of Parliament for the Conservative Party. He's a Shadow Home Office Minister. Matt, your reaction to that extraordinary video by Paul Nowak?
I mean, what a ridiculous statement. You know what? People around this country concerned about immigration want to see people who've broken into this country deported. They have real concerns about it. This idea that you should brush all this stuff under the carpet and never speak about it, and anybody who dares to challenge such a situation is racist, is actually what's wrong with the entire problem. It's the reason that this issue hasn't been dealt with as thoroughly as it should have. It's the reason that things like the grooming gang scandal got so big, because no one dares to speak out. Actually, integration, the scale of immigration into this country, the huge challenges that the public are rightly, utterly peed off with and want to see some solutions on. Anybody who dares to speak out being branded a racist, what a ridiculous thing to say.
Robert Jenrick hasn't got back to us about this yet, but what do you imagine his reaction will be?
I think he'll probably treat it with the contempt it deserves. It's a stupid statement by a stupid man, and it's not representative of the public attitude as well.
Why do you think Paul Nowak has made this video and made this statement now, and why do you think he feels he can say that?
Maybe he wants a few extra Twitter followers. He wants to be controversial. He wants me and you to be talking about it now so that people go on and say, who is this nutty man and what is he saying? Maybe we should have a look. Don't follow him on Twitter. He doesn't deserve it. He's talking rubbish.
Tell me what you think about the fact that the pro-Palestinian protests are going to go ahead in London tomorrow. I did speak to one of the protesters earlier. She is a Jewish woman who takes part in the protests and says that she is against what she calls Israeli apartheid and what she calls a genocide. Factually, it is not a genocide. Matt, I just wonder, what, these protests going ahead, I don't know about you, I want to be in a country where protests are allowed. Hamas wouldn't allow such a protest to take place in Gaza, for example. Yet at the same time, I do think they're hate marches, and I do think that there are loads of people on them who support organisations who want to kill every Jew.
Without doubt, some of the behaviour we've seen in these protests has been completely inappropriate. It's threatening, it's intimidating. People walking around London feel entirely intimidated by it, threatened by it, and rightly so when you see some of the behaviour, some of the things that are chanted. But actually now, this week, with the positive news that we've got on the Middle East, the potential that this entire thing could come to an end, everybody, whoever you are and whatever your ridiculous political beliefs of some of these people, we should all want to see innocent hostages returned home. We should all want to see aid sent in to Gaza. We should all want to see an end to the pain and suffering, the humanitarian crisis that is in Gaza. There's the potential that's going to happen. It's a precarious situation. There's negotiations going on with a terrorist organisation. You know, it could come unstuck. But actually, there's a huge amount of hope this week. And for these people to still go out and protest in such a way, I just think it it tells you more about them than it does about the situation.
I just want to talk about Nigel Farage now, because there is a person who has now been convicted of threatening to kill him, who has posted about a year ago on TikTok. Fayez Khan, he posted this clip on TikTok threatening to kill Nigel Farage. Let's just play this.
You not know me. I gonna come to England. I gonna mother passa, man. You know, there's mother passa. Every country know me. Vamaya mother passa. I'm TikToker. I'm not gang. I'm not mafia. I'm mafia's papa, mother passa, man. Rais Montana.
Well, I mean, really straightforwardly, that is a threat to kill Nigel Farage. He's now been convicted. It'll be very interesting to see what sentence he receives. And we can remember a few weeks ago, Zia Youssef, who's Reform UK's head of policy, spoke to about Nigel Farage's security being cut. He spoke to Mike Graham about a month ago. Let's remind ourselves of this.
About it, but I think it is in the public interest that they know that just about 2 weeks ago, the authorities slashed the size of Nigel's security detail by 75%. The authorities cut Nigel's security detail by 75% 2 weeks ago. That's why so many of us around Nigel are so worried. Now, I want to be clear and reassure people who A, support Nigel, but B, all right-thinking people in this country who believe in sensible democratic politics in this country, that thankfully donors stepped in and have shored up that security, so Nigel is well protected. But the Prime Minister knows exactly what he's doing. This is a Prime Minister who's circling the drain, who, according to a poll this week, is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record. According to a poll this week, the majority of Labour members want to be replaced, and he's lashing out against the man that he knows. Starmer knows he cannot beat Nigel at the ballot box, so he's embarked on the most, I want to say it again, extraordinary, coordinated attacks to incite violence against the man who is the bookmaker's favourite to replace him at number 10 Downing Street. It's disgusting, and he should apologise.
Matt, what are your thoughts as a shadow Home Office Minister on this case that has happened today? And there are many politicians who have security, well, not very many, a handful of them who have security, but I'm sure it's something you've thought about yourself.
Well, I mean, what a vile character. I'm on about Fayez Khan, not Yusuf. But what a vile individual. But the reality is, this man has broken into the country. We're on about him standing trial. He shouldn't be here. He should have, been sent back the second he got into the country. He should not be allowed to stay, no matter what. Criminals like that should not be allowed in. But actually, it's not just an affront to Farage and what he stands for. It's actually anti-British, anti-democratic to think that you can come here, threaten politicians whose views you disagree with. Really dangerous situation. Actually, these threats need to be fully assessed, and the book needs to be thrown at anybody who threatens democratically elected individuals, because you cannot gag people from having their say. No matter how much you disagree with someone's views, you have no right to stop them having those views by using violence and threats.
You, of course, will be familiar with politicians who have these protection officers. Should Nigel Farage not have taxpayer-funded protection officers, given the level of threat to him? He's had them taken away, as Zia Youssef was saying.
I mean, I don't know the detail and the ins and outs of what Zia Youssef said, but the reality is that these threats do need to be assessed and need to be assessed properly,
but the assessment has been made
with no political interference.
But of course,
of
course, it should be in threat alone. I completely agree with that. The fact is, though, that Nigel Farage clearly is a very prominent politician. He has threats against him all the time, and he doesn't have taxpayer-funded police officers who are looking after him. I mean, we had someone arguing earlier on that, Theresa May, Liz Truss, they have taxpayer-funded protection for the rest of their life. They have been Prime Minister of this country, and maybe that's slightly different. But actually, surely there is a big threat to Nigel Farage.
My interpretation of what Zia Youssef said there wasn't that he doesn't have any public-funded protection. Actually, that's not what I got from it.
It was cut by 70. What happened was it was cut by 75%. They said this isn't practical to just have 25%. Therefore, they said actually we don't want the 25%. And Reform UK are now spending something like £1 million a year having privately funded guards for Nigel Farage. That's what's happening.
I think when there is a substantial threat to an elected politician, the authorities need to make a real, non-political based, independent assessment of what that threat is and what they need to put in place. We cannot have politicians being attacked and put under threat like that in any circumstances, because it's bad for democracy and it's bad for Britain.
Do you worry about your own security, Matt?
I think, do you know what? I think all politicians have to consider that. All politicians have to look at the threats that we receive, how legitimate they are, how legitimate they aren't. We also have to be careful about the discourse that we use in public life and what we do and don't say, so that we're responsible in our approach and don't encourage such people to say such things and do such things.
Something that's arguably slightly less controversial is there's been quite a discussion behind the scenes here at Talk Today about your rugby top shirt combo this evening. Matt, one observer said perhaps he was trying to be smart and then decided I'm a bit cold. What are your thoughts on your attire today?
This is me, fresh from the doorsteps. It's Constituency Friday. I've had my surgeries. I've been and spoke to a school. I've visited a couple of businesses, and I've been knocking on doors for the last couple of hours. And it was bloody cold, so I thought I'd go for the sweater.
Sounds good. I think we can all support that right across the political divide. We definitely don't want Matt Vickers to be cold. Thank you very much indeed. That's Matt, who is the Shadow Home Office Minister and Conservative MP for Stockton West. Lots on the video. Penny says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Penny. That video calling Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick racist is appalling. They're talking about economic and in a lot of cases dangerous migrants. He's no idea. I hope they both take legal action against Paul Nowak, but no doubt he'll get a lefty judge to say it was okay. I'm very worried about these judges who seem to be very left-wing now. Chris in Newbury says, does the head of the TUC not know of libel and defamation laws? Does he not know he doesn't have parliamentary privilege? I hope he has very deep pockets, says Chris in Newbury. Chris, I think that's a very well observed point. Let's speak to Michael in Birmingham, who's given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Michael, your thoughts on this video, extraordinary video by the head of the TUC union?
It wasn't so much a video, Peter. It's about Robert Jenrick's comments I really wanted to talk about, which kind of sparked the video.
Okay.
I must admit, I was a little puzzled by them. And look, Mr. Jenrick's a cleverer man than I will ever be.
This is Robert Jenrick. Just to give context to people who might not know, you're from Birmingham. He said he was in an area of Birmingham. He was there for 90 minutes and he didn't see another white face.
Yeah, and I was puzzled about it, not to the extent that what he said wasn't true, but it's been like that for many years, many decades. And I wonder if maybe Mr. Jenrick should clarify the thinking that I have. It's not so much about the concentration of the people, it's about the pace of change, because I see less and less white people everywhere I go, provincially as well. And that's changing within the matter of months. I went to a place on Merseyside at Christmas. 6 months later, I went back there. I was staggered at how that had changed. You know, I was very much in the minority, and that's everywhere you go. I flew back into Britain 3 weeks ago from a vacation. Okay, it might be a function of where I went, but normally you would see like 50-60% white people on the plane. There was less than 5, and 5% I would estimate, and even at the airport as well. And even my elderly brothers, you know, who are actually Labour voters and very, very liberal in their views. One of them remarked when he went past his daughter's old school the other day, and I'm sorry for being so direct, he said, I didn't see a white kid coming out of that school. And that's not in London, that's not in a big city, that's in...
Is this something we need to worry about, Michael? Is actually commenting on that? I think you commenting on, I don't think you've said anything that's even vaguely racist. I think what you've said is factual. You're talking about your experience. You're talking about the experiences of your brother and what they've said. Do you think even having this discussion is something that people like Paul Nowak don't want us to have, don't want us to actually remark, well, actually, the country is changing?
Well, I'm under absolutely no doubt that the country is changing, and everybody I know, you might say, well, I know people like me, thinks exactly the same, and the pace of that change, it actually feels almost deliberate, Peter. It feels like there's something deliberate going on behind that.
What do you worry about?
America.
Okay, can I ask what goes through your head? You've made those factual points, but what goes through your head? Yeah. Are you worried about this? Does this concern you? And if so, why?
I'll tell you what it feels like. It's not so much that it concerns me, because in my personal life is very multicultural and very multiracial, you know, including biracial children. So I'm certainly not going to alienate myself from them. However, it feels as if there's some sort of planning behind it. that this is happening so quickly and so little is being done. I mean, take the boats. Everybody in the world can see it. Starmer can see it. Everybody can see it. But he's doing absolutely nothing because they don't want to, because it feels like there's an agenda at play. Now, I might be conspiratorial, or maybe I'm going completely out of my mind, but so many people are saying that everywhere, Peter. Just look at TV ads. Look at the way TV
Well, we've seen the statistics on that. We've seen, for example, black people massively overrepresented in TV ads, mixed-race couples. The statistics versus the reality are very, very different in TV ads. That is another factual point.
Well, exactly. And by the way, I did see that study, and it said 50%. Peter, I can watch any set of ads in between the programmes, and it's not 50%, it's 80, 90%.
Yeah.
And white men are absolutely invisible. Absolutely invisible.
Or if they're there, they're like Daddy Pig and Peppa Pig, and they're treated like idiots, and they're the villain. They're not. No white man can do anything right in an ad. We've seen that time and time again. Michael, listen, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate that. Appreciate what you giving me a ring from Birmingham. If you want to do the same thing, 0344 499 1000. Paul says, I'm just watching you now. Immigration by definition means other people from other races want to illegally enter this country. It's uncontrollable immigration the UK people don't want regardless of race. Wanting to come to the UK illegally is the problem, not the race of the people. Gary says, what is that clown from the TUC on about? Reform has no intention of deporting migrants who are making a worthwhile contribution. They're talking about deporting migrants who have come here and are a burden on the state. The bottom line is that no migrant ever came to this country for our benefit. They come to make a better life for themselves, which is fine. But what our government needs to do is to make sure that whilst they're making a better life for themselves, they're also contributing to our economy and towards creating a better life for the rest of us. And if not, they need to go back to where they came from. I don't see why that is even controversial. We'll talk more about the TUC. We've got Lord Walney, John Woodcock, who's with us in a second, the former government political violence advisor. I would be very interested in his views on this TUC video. We're going to talk to him about the migrant with the AK-47 face tattoo, but I think we should also play him the video and ask him his thoughts on that. Stay with us here on Talk.
So a lot of these people who come from Syria or the Middle East, various areas, or Africa, they say, oh, we're from Sudan, because they know that the British Home Office allows in 99% of Sudanese asylum seekers. We allow pretty much more than 90% of Afghani asylum seekers. So there's this sort of league table that we've got of people from various countries who get almost automatic leave to live here. It's out of control.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, just been linked through some messages. We'll come to those in a minute or two. But before all that, I want to talk to Lord Walney, John Woodcock, who's the former government political violence advisor, former Labour MP as well. John, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, hi Peter, good to see you.
Extraordinary video in the last hour or so from Paul Nowak, who is the head of the Trades Union Congress. I just want to play it to you now and to your viewers and listeners who may not have seen it. Maybe they've just switched the radio or the telly on. He accuses both Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, and Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, of being racists. Let's just have a look at this.
Voting reform doesn't make you a racist. Worrying about your wages, your bills and the cost of living crisis doesn't make you a racist. And wanting a fair, sensible approach to migration doesn't make you a racist. But I tell you what does make you a racist. Threatening to deport people who came to this country to live and work, no matter how long they've been here, no matter how hard they've worked, how much they've contributed, or whether or not they've raised their family. Or walking around one of our major cities and complaining that you don't see any white faces, presumably because both your eyes and your mind are closed. And equating being British to being a white, privately educated Tory xenophobe. So here's the truth. If you talk like a racist, if you walk around with your little camera making films that make you sound like a racist, you probably are a racist.
John, what do you make of that? What does that add to the conversation, and do you think he has a point?
I don't think it helps. I don't think that it will achieve what I assume Paul Novick's objectives are, which is to ensure that there's that probably the likes of Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage don't end up running the country. And I think we've all got to be careful with language. It is a difficult and divided time, and the more that we can do to actually increase harmony between groups, the better. But actually calling people racist in this way does the opposite, because what it will do is it will say to a lot of people who are actually attracted by the immigration message that they hear from Nigel Farage and from Robert Jenrick. Many of those people may not actually be white, as it happens, but it says to them that those kind of views and that kind of talk is not welcome by trade unions and by the left, which actually makes it harder to win the argument.
We've also seen the conviction today of a migrant with an AK-47 face tattoo found guilty of threatening to kill Nigel Farage. You're a former government political violence advisor. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's appalling, and it's good to get the conviction, and we must be absolutely clear that you can have strong rhetoric and forceful debate, but that there is no place for physical violence and physical threats. And I know that Nigel Farage gets more than his fair share of rhetoric. As it happens, I didn't think it was right that he was accusing the other day Keir Starmer of increasing the risk to him. I think you've got to. This is a really serious subject, and it's easy to reduce its effectiveness when you call it out wrongly. But make no mistake, the sense of threat and violence is increasing on both
Should Nigel Farage have 24-hour protection, do you think? Because he's had that taken away from him if the threat's increasing, especially to one of the best known politicians in the country, surely
is unhappy at the level of protection that he has, and I hope that the security services within Parliament take that really seriously and can deliver a level of protection that satisfies him.
Speaking of political violence, we know that the pro-Palestinian protesters are going to take to the streets again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Why on earth they're doing that is beyond me. I interviewed one of those protesters earlier today, and we had quite an argument actually. But I just don't really get it, and I wonder, there is a time and a place for protest. I don't want to take anybody's right to peacefully protest away from them, but is there anybody in any doubt what they think, apart from now they've got the ceasefire? People saying, ceasefire now, well, you've got the ceasefire, Why are you protesting?
Yeah, exactly. This is the only so-called genocide in history that many of the people campaigning against it are actually apparently unhappy when it's ending. For many people across Britain, they have been horrified and deeply concerned about the footage that they've seen in Gaza. That they've wanted this conflict to come to an end, and some of them have been out on the streets in making that point, even though it's a conflict thousands of miles away, which the UK government can't really have any handle in. But for others, and I think the core of the organisers here, it's not actually at foundation been about the conflict and the need for a ceasefire. It's actually been about campaigning against Israel. They hate the state of Israel. They've never accepted its legitimacy, and they want it gone. And it's that kind of angry rhetoric which has spilled over too often into the atmosphere of fear and intimidation for so many British Jews.
John, thank you. That is John Woodcock, Lord Wolney there, former Government Political Violence Advisor. He's a former Labour MP as well. Jill is in Cornwall, wants to talk about migrants, and I think specifically about the one who's been convicted of that threat against Farage. Jill, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Well, what I'd like to say is that if the ECHR are stopping this man from being kicked out of the country, and that's what we should do, and because he's obviously a threat, he's not going to go away. And why should we, as this country, pay for him to be kept in prison where he will live better than some of these poor devils that are living on the streets? I don't know. I mean, we understand that he can't be sent back to his country. Why not?
Yeah, well, he should be immediately, Jill, well, once he's served his sentence. Thank you for your thoughts. Appreciate that. And thanks to Mick in Wallington, who says, I think there's probably an important leadership vote for the TUC pending, and that's why he thinks Paul Nowak is doing what he's doing. Lots to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. We'll take as many of your calls as we can. We'll also talk to John Lucas in a second from The Sun, see what's coming up in the paper there, covering all sorts of stories, including Ricky Hatton's funeral. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Thank you so much for your company this evening. John Lucas is with me, the night news editor of The Sun, who has inexplicably been overlooked for the Nobel Peace Prize. John, thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah.
Good to be with you. Some really good stories in The Sun tomorrow, of course. Tyson Fury, Liam Gallagher and the Roonies leading mourners in Manchester for Ricky Hatton's funeral. Big coverage of that in the paper tomorrow.
Yeah, well, look, this is the very sad sort of big set piece of the day. Brought Manchester to a standstill today. Funeral of Ricky Hatton, as everybody will be aware, you know, he's one of the country's boxing greats, possibly one of the best of his generation. Tragically died, I think it's about 3 weeks ago. Absolute, you know, national icon, but a huge figure in Manchester, huge sporting figure, cultural figure, and his funeral today it really did bring the city to a standstill. It was a 15-mile procession. I didn't realise this until today. He was a huge Only Fools and Horses fan.
Oh right, okay.
And he'd bought the. I'd have to get the model right. It's a Reliant Regal,
right?
The three-wheeled van.
The yellow one. Trotters Independent Traders.
Exactly, and he had it all decked out exactly like the show. He'd paid $4,000 for it. And he actually used to drive it round.
Right.
And that was at the front of this of the procession. So it sort of shows you what, you know, sort of character. Everyone was talking about his humour today with the eulogies. And as you say, all the big stars, especially the Manchester stars and the stars of the boxing world were there. And he'd said once he wanted three things in life. One was to become a boxing world champion. One was to be a Manchester City fan, and the other was to listen to Oasis. And he became so big that the Gallagher brothers once brought his belts into the ring with him when he fought in Vegas, and they were there today. You know, Liam looked. If you see Liam, you know, very, very sad. Everyone's very sad, and yeah, just a huge occasion. Very tragic.
Very troubled life.
Very troubled life. So. It was a 15-year boxing career. He'd done everything. He's won 4 world titles, but he struggled with drinking afterwards. He had his demons, mental health problems, but I think what I should mention is that since his death, his family have set up the Ricky Hatton Foundation, which you'll be able to look up. You'll find the links on the website, I'm sure, with the stories, and that's going to that's there to help people,
of course,
in crisis.
And today, of course, World Mental Health Day as well, we remember. Jude Bellingham, of course, talking about that as well today too. Let's talk about the China spy trial, this witness accusing ministers and prosecutors of botching it in a way that smacks of interference. This is quite a complicated story, but it's a fascinating one as well.
It's very complicated. It's a slow burner, and it's sort of broken at a time when, you know, MPs aren't, you know, they're not there to hold everybody to account, and I think it certainly feels like certain elements of this story are going to unravel. Very brief version of it. 2 parliamentary aides who'd spent a lot of time living and teaching in China and came back to work for MPs here were charged with passing information to Chinese agents. They've been charged with this, and it's fallen apart. The argument is it fell apart because China wasn't officially classified as an enemy. So therefore, are you passing secrets to the enemy? Now, what prosecutors have said is that, well, that's not part of the law. You know, that gets decided in the courtroom when you put them on trial, whether or not you want to count that. You know, whether you want to say that you're aiding a foreign enemy, you say that in the courtroom. You don't have to decide that beforehand. Now, they were going to trial. Something has happened where they're suddenly not going to trial anymore. And was this at the intervention of the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell? It's a very, very murky situation. One of the guys who's going to be the key witnesses, I won't name him now, but it'll be in the paper tomorrow. I obviously don't want to give it away. I know rivals watch and listen to this, but he's saying, well, look, ministers and prosecutors are both at fault here. How have we got to this situation? Now, if it turns out that the government or someone in the government has interfered in the prosecution of 2 men accused of passing. Now, what a lot of people can't understand is, well, why does it have to be an enemy? You couldn't pass secrets or information to French intelligence agents.
Yes,
off
exactly.
The books.
That would still be illegal.
Or the United States. You can't do that. Yeah. Why this has happened, and exactly who's responsible for it, it's very murky, and I think it's sort of starting to cut through. It's one of those that's been
around for a while.
Well, I'm seeing on Twitter, mainstream celebs and ordinary people starting to tweet about it, and that's when you sort of know that actually...
It's interesting that Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, he is going to speak to the Intelligence and Security Committee. They're going to quiz him about this. Sadly for us as journos, it will be behind closed doors, but it'll be very, very interesting to see how this develops, and the Sun will bring you developments in that. Let's talk about Ant Middleton now. Speaking about sharing secrets, he who shares is sued. He is the former chief instructor for SAS Who Dares Wins, can't believe they didn't ask me, and he's accused of breach of contract. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, as you say, secrets, they do have a way of coming back to bite you on the backside. There's Ant Middleton, a former SAS man. Now, you remember back in the distant past, you had former SAS guys like Andy McNabb and Chris Ryan writing books, and that was all controversial, and there were various challenges to what they could and couldn't say, all in the midst of time now. But now we're in the Twitter age, and Ant Middleton, he went on to present SAS Who Dares Wins, very popular show, but this all centres around social media posts. Now, we still don't know exactly what he's alleged to have said, but he's being sued. Extraordinary, very, very unusual for this to happen. He's being taken to the High Court by the MOD for breach of contract for things that he's posted on social media. So this, hazard a guess, it's going to be about operational details of missions that he was on, or perhaps that colleagues were on that he's given away. Not sure how recent those posts are, or whether this is something that's further back that's had repercussions. It's going to be very, very interesting. Ant has had all sorts of issues. He's a bit of a controversial guy, very outspoken man, but he is a hero. He was in the SBS, or I should get that right, and he'd done 2 tours of Afghanistan, but he had a conviction for common assault. He ended up getting axed from the show because of some complaints from other staff and about comments, rather than anything worse than that.
We'll read all about that in the Sun tomorrow. Tell us about Guinness and Christmas.
Yeah, well, if you like Christmas...
I do, love it.
And you like Guinness...
I don't.
You don't, but many people do.
Yes.
It's good news because Guinness is making gravy.
Brilliant.
And
I've had like steak in Guinness, and I've had Guinness bread as well, like Guinness in the bread and stuff. So now they're going to have gravy.
Yeah, well, Guinness is I remember when I was younger, it was just that sort of... It's a bit of an old man's drink in the pub.
Yeah.
And every now and then you sort of got involved with a Guinness. But now it's incredibly popular. Lots of young people.
I've had a Guinness Zero. You see, I don't drink, so I haven't had a drink in 7 years.
Guinness Zero is very good.
I had a Guinness Zero. In fact, I had a pint of Guinness Zero in my friend Molly Guinness's house. She is one of the Guinnesses, and she works in this building actually. And she invited me round and said, "Well, would you like to drink?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I've got to ask you for a Guinness Zero if you have one." So I had a Guinness with Guinness.
She must have. She's surely got a massive stockpile.
One would hope so. I don't know if she gets it for free or not. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd think you would.
Yeah.
But yeah, Guinness is everywhere. You get Guinness Crisp, Guinness Twiglets. I've seen Guinness sort of Marmite spread.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff.
Guinness and Marmite together at last.
Exactly. And now you're going to have it on your Christmas dinner, poured straight. Would
you be happy to have Guinness gravy in your Christmas dinner?
Oh, we'll certainly try. You'd want to try it first.
Are you going to be working on Christmas Day?
I actually am going to.
You're working on Christmas Day, are you? Right. Oh, that's grim. That's grim.
But someone's got to do it. It's my
News
turn.
never stops.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Well, Guinness going toe to toe with Bisto. You can read all about that tomorrow in the Sun. John, thank you. That is John Lucas there. He is the night news editor of the Sun. Great one from Graham in Bishy talking about John being overlooked for the Nobel Peace Prize, as have I, sadly. David Lammy should have got the Nobel Peace Prize, as he clearly was the mastermind behind this deal. says Graham and Bushy. If you haven't seen Celebrity Mastermind with David Lammy, I implore you, please watch it. All I can say is who discovered radium, which Marie and Pierre discovered radium. It wasn't Antoinette, as he said. Stay with us.
The way to deal with it is quite simply to detain every single illegal immigrant securely behind wire until such time as we can return them to whence they came or they ask to go back. Now that does require significant legal changes, but this government doesn't seem to want to be fair, neither did the previous, want to take those legal, do that legal amendment, withdraw from the ECHR and so on. They didn't want to do it. It was all too contentious for them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Phil in Portsmouth, who says these marches are kind of along the lines that Mike Graham asked about net zero. What happens when we reach it? Now we've reached a ceasefire, what happens now? They will probably protest that Israel should pay reparations to the people of Gaza. And thank you to everyone else who's been in touch, including Ian, who's given me a ring from Shirley in Solihull. Is that correct, Ian?
Hi, Peter. Yes,
hi there. What would you like to say, Ian?
Well, I was watching earlier on when you were talking about Gaza and also about the illegal immigrants. And I was thinking, well, why don't we do some sort of deal of sending them to Gaza to help rebuild the place?
That's a novel idea.
And the other thing about that is they would be safe because the UN would obviously be there as peacekeepers.
Yes, of course, and the UN will be able to keep them safe. That's a very interesting view. I'm not sure it's going to happen, Ian, but certainly...
No, but if you got Tony Blair going over there, surely we can do a deal with him.
Yeah, I mean, haven't the people of the Middle East suffered enough? That's my question. Ian, thank you.
Oh, indeed.
Thanks. Sorry, go ahead. Ian, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was my whole point. But a moment ago, you also mentioned the reparations, etc. Now, you had somebody on the other day talking about that and saying, well, we haven't had money from the Romans or the Norse or the Normans, etc. But no one's ever mentioned the Moors when they came across to the south of England and the south of Ireland, the sacking of Wexford, etc.
I do wonder if we
took slaves back.
I do wonder how far you go back. Listen, thank you, Ian. Appreciate that. Let's speak to Adrian in Somerset. It is in regard to, I think, Adrian's point is about Nigel Farage and the TikToker. Adrian, what do you think about this?
Hello, Peter. Hope you're well. Yeah.
You too.
So, it's regarding that, and what you say, and I agree with what you say, that if you commit a crime in this country, if you're from another country, we'll say what you said, argument's sake, Egypt. So, the man from Egypt commits a crime in the UK and he serves here to ensure that he has a sentence.
Yeah.
Now, say if it costs this government, argument's sake, figure out of the air £10,000.
Yeah.
So to prison that man for however long costs £10,000, why can't we have an agreement, or there's a worldly agreement, wherever that person comes from, he does his time here, that £10,000 that's spent from our government gets recuperated from Egypt, and then when he returns to Egypt, how he works, he has to pay that back to that country.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I wonder how practical it is. I wonder whether you know, what's in it for Egypt, essentially. They say, well, we've got rid of this guy. He's a murderer. He stays, this is the hypothetical murderer from Egypt who then goes into prison with here. I don't know about you, Adrian, but if someone had committed a crime against me or my family, or, you know, especially something as serious as murder, I would want them to serve their sentence in this country and then be deported, because there's just no guarantee if they're deported they'll serve even a day in prison.
Yeah, and that's what I totally agree with, that they serve their time in this country, but they still have the repercussion for getting deported and then having to pay back for what Egypt have had to pay us.
Yeah,
what I mean?
I see exactly what you mean, Adrian.
It's kind of like drink driving. You get caught drink driving, you pay your fine, you lose your license for a year, but you've got the repercussions of for 10 years for that to be on your license.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah,
and we're just not at a loss.
Yeah. Adrian, you make some good points there. Thanks for giving me a ring from Somerset. Let's go to Lincolnshire. And Mark, who has some thoughts on this. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello there, Peter.
Hi, Mark.
Just picking up from that last caller there. If somebody was convicted of murder and it was, no complete proof of it, no doubt, basically, not this, beyond reasonable doubt. If it was a no doubt case, then it should be swinging off the end of a piece of rope.
I don't agree, Mark. I don't believe in the death penalty.
Well, I was going to say, the thing is, they would never give us a referendum on this anyway, because I don't think they'd like the answer they get.
Well, it's really interesting you mentioned that, actually, because if you look at polling that has been done in recent years, up until about 5 years ago, there was a majority in favour of the death penalty, and it's ebbed away a bit, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it may well have done, but as I say, Peter, it's a moot point, really, because they'd never give us a referendum, and politicians themselves would never have the courage to do so anyway, I don't think. But, move on from that point.
Yeah, what do you make of this Farage guy?
This Madapasa geezer. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm pleased he's been found guilty. I mean, it was obviously a clear present danger for Nigel Farage, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Even if he was going to turn around and say, oh, well, I was only messing about kind of thing, I'm young, I'm stupid, whatever, that's irrelevant to me, because the fact remains that threat's always there. I mean, he's got the blooming AK on his
face, yeah. Well, do you want to hear what the lawyer said, Mark? He said, defence lawyer Charles Royal said Khan was remonstrating in his own idiosyncratic, moronic, comedic, eye-catching, attention-seeking way, rather than making a threat to kill. He told jurors the trial was not about your views on illegal immigration nor your views about face tattoos, Brexit or reform. You shouldn't hold any silence against him because he refused to testify, or didn't want to give evidence anyway, in his own trial. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward what happened, and of course he's been convicted of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a feeling that they might try and, cramp in some kind of free speech kind of thing into this.
We'll see how long he goes to prison for as well. That'll be very interesting.
That'd certainly be interesting, won't it? I've got a funny feeling he could actually do a reasonable amount of time for it, because of the profile of the case. It would look pretty bad on the establishment.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with all of that, Mark. Yeah.
When you're talking about a sitting MP, my only thing is I just wish that You see, you always find this with politicians. They're always very keen on punishment for people who offend them.
Yeah.
However, when it's members of the general public, they don't seem quite so bothered about prison sentences and that kind of thing. You know, free speech is dead in the country, or certainly it's on its last legs anyway, at the very least. All this kind of stuff, you know, death threats that ordinary members of the public receive don't get the attention that they should get.
Mark, I've got to talk to Kevin O'Sullivan in just a second, but I think you had you had a point on Gaza you wanted to get across?
My only thing on Gaza is, yes, can we start moving on at some point, please? Because this has gone on just way too long. I wish the people of Gaza the best. I suspect that this will only rear its ugly head once more, because it just will. I mean, you're talking how you go about rehabilitating people that have been indoctrinated for 70 plus years into hating their neighbour. How you eventually get them to coexist next to them, I don't see that as a possibility, if I'm honest.
Well, it's really interesting. When I was in Israel a month ago, they said, look, well, one of the people, the former National Security Advisor, a lot of what he said really stayed with me. And he said, look, this isn't about hearts and minds. This isn't about convincing people. This is about the existential threat to Israel. And that's what they're dealing with. And that's what any peace deal has to deal with. It's not about holding hands and worshipping a rainbow. It's about saying, how do we stop them doing it again?
And I don't think you can. I think, as I say, the hatred is so deep. It runs so deep. I mean, equally as well, you have to remember that these people they've basically been told that they're the forever victim at the end of the day. All of their Arab friends tell them they're the forever victim. All the UN tells them.
In fairness, some of the Arab countries have been quite supportive of Israel and this deal. But Mark, listen, we're going to have to leave it there, but I really appreciate your call this evening. That's Mark in Lincolnshire on a couple of topics there. Thank you to Bill in Fleet, who says, take the cost for housing foreign criminals off the international aid budget. Could take it directly from the allotment to the allocation, I think, to the country of the criminal, says Bill in Fleet. Dana in Kent says, don't knock David Lammy, Peter. He's proof Labour thickos can become equal and control us. David Lammy went to Cambridge University. I'll just leave that with you. Just a reminder of what the head of the TUC has been saying. This is Paul Nowak, who has been talking about the fact that he believes that Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick are racists.
Voting reform doesn't make you a racist. Worrying about your wages, your bills and the cost of living crisis doesn't make you a racist. And wanting a fair, sensible approach to migration doesn't make you a racist. But I tell you what does make you a racist. Threatening to deport people who came to this country to live and work, no matter how long they've been here, no matter how hard they've worked, how much they've contributed, or whether or not they've raised their family. Or walking around one of our major cities and complaining that you don't see any white faces, presumably because both your eyes and your mind are closed. And equating being British to being a white, privately educated Tory xenophobe. So here's the truth. If you talk like a racist, if you walk around with your little camera making films that make you sound like a racist, you probably are a racist.
Really interesting. We heard that from Paul Nowak there, the head of the TUC. We've also had, of course, David Lammy saying that Nigel Farage flirted with the Hitler Youth. Factually, he didn't. Completely wrong. Zach Polanski, the head of the Green Party, as well, calling them fascists, which is also factually incorrect. Kevin O'Sullivan is here on the other side of the 7 o'clock news, no doubt talking about some of this. I mean, what do you make of that, Kevin?
Well, they're just sort of cartoon socialists, aren't they? This is like the left-wing cliche book. Oh, they're fascists, they're Nazis, you know, they're racists. It's meaningless. They've thrown these terms, these insults around about right-wing people far too much. And, you know, Nigel Farage, I can understand why some people don't agree with him, but he's not a racist, he's not a fascist, he's not a Nazi. And when people like the TUC...
Paul Nowak,
Paul Nowak and Zach Polanski say they demean themselves. It's ridiculous.
What's coming up in your show, Kev?
Well, we're going to kick off, of course, with the